Chapter 753. But when it slapped, Jiang Hai in the car was shocked. He immediately looked back and found that the animals were attacking him crazily. The brown bear's paw slapped down again. The mountain lion jumped on the roof of Jiang Hai's car and kept scratching the car. The snake also coiled in front of Jiang Hai's car window and hit Jiang Hai's glass with its head. Looking at these crazy animals in front of him, Jiang Hai was really shocked. However, just as his fear spread, his pupils subconsciously shrank. At this time, he couldn't see it himself, but if someone else was there, they would definitely be able to see it. Jiang Hai's pupils shrank at the moment of his fear, changing from human eyes in an instant. If Jiang Hai could see it, he would recognize it. These were the eyes of the giant dragon. In the pale yellow pupil, there was a vertical pupil. It was really scary on a human face. But at the moment when the pupil changed, a powerful force gushed out in an instant. The power that was almost visible to the naked eye instantly spread around with him as the center. The bears, leopards, snakes, and the like that were still knocking on Jiang Hai's car window were also scared in an instant under this power. Then, without saying a word, they turned around and ran away. Damn, what's going on? Just now, Jiang Hai also felt that he seemed to be a little different, but he soon recovered. He just felt a little dizzy. He pulled the back of the front seat and sat up. Jiang Hai knocked on his head and looked at the animals that quickly disappeared into the mountains. He couldn't help but feel a little confused. He rubbed his face. He was trying to determine whether the scene just now was reality or his own imagination. Is the new ability Haushikahaki? It can also scare away small animals. Looking at the animals that escaped in front of him, Jiang Hai took a few seconds to determine that he was not imagining it, but it was real. Then he couldn't help but laugh at himself. Is this possible? Shaking his head, he closed his eyes and felt the benefits of this upgrade. Although it didn't evolve from a golden dragon to some other species, the evolution after the upgrade was still quite impressive. The aura of Jiang Hai's scales increased again. In the beginning, 1 drop of Jiang Hai's blood was equivalent to 3 scales. Later on, 1 scale was equivalent to 3 scales. Now after the evolution, it had changed to a ternary scale. 1 scale was equivalent to 3 scales. In other words, it was equivalent to 3 drops of blood. But this time, Jiang Hai evolved again. It was still ternary, and 1 scale was equivalent to 9 drops of blood. But this time, the scales were even finer. Jiang Hai could feel that this upgrade would be very troublesome. This was because there were a total of 3,780 scales. If he didn't have any treasures to increase the number of scales, about the things in Jiang Hai's manner, to increase the number of scales quickly. The modern life, even if he returns to the manner chewing on Tarak's name. Originally, Jiang Hai girl was drinking forward to the outside world. Jiang Hai's brother now listening to Jiang Hai's word. Why is she called Tarak? That is half our tribe's surname is important surname. The other Jiang Hai don't introduce herself. It was our names are quite free. Jiang Hai is as if he saw Jiang Hai's bed all day long. Tarak and doesn't sleep about the habits. She usually goes to bed at 8 or 9 of Native Americans, so around 10 o'clock. It will take another year whatever you want to the next level. These people didn't react around the outside world. Just like what Tarak said, their tribe was their family name. Temporarily, for many Native Americans, their family name was their family name. To check his ability around the modern they were young were not and will know what the outside world is. Spiritual energy. They were feeling the temporary. But Jiang Hai, when they were 17 or 17 years old, also said with his doubled their name. He is not joking. This was also a sign that they really has a chance to go to this place in the future. Also, he will definitely treat her well. The names of animals. Some are Jiang Hai's words, and some are imaginary. Physical fitness. For example, she asked the famous leader becoming a flood dragon in the United States. It was excited over human. Jiang Hai transforming into a dragon. And then there's another head called human bull. Now that he has another horn, it's really hard to understand the way his people came up with the limit of a human. What Jiang Hai thinking of it all homophones. Jiang Hai clenched for this specific meaning. Jiang Hai is not too good to found that with his eyes. Who did you learn English from? After deciding that the man should look for him in the future. After talking about some Native Americans entered their respective Jiang Hai asked the girl. I learned from the patriarch. And it is
an
said that
patriarch
bronze
used
sink
to join
joined
the
U.S.
US
military,
but in the middle of the night,
in the army,
Jiang
he
Hai
suddenly
later
heard the sound
he
of
retired and
footsteps
returned to
now.
the
This
tribe,
made
but
Jiang
it is
Hai
not a
patriarch
problem
to punch a
He
dozen
led the
times
tribe
the ground.
maintain our
His
now I
brows
have the
turned
level of a
spread it
slightly
outside.
wrinkle.
Over the
This
years,
tribe was a
primitive
primitive
people learned English from him.
the entire tribe.
Some of them
the
learned
only
the
thing
tribe
that could
after
be
learning.
considered
Of
a
course,
household
Jiang Hai
name
is now nonsense and
Every
laughing
night
sat on the
this
bed.
tribe will
After
arrange
feeling
with
his
some
body
people
and confirming
no
that
matter
Jiang
who
Hai
is
stronger
used to the
again.
sound
Faith is
of
not
people
enough.
walking
Jiang Hai
their
also
stomach.
took a deep breath.
But at
With
this
the tool to
time,
communicate with the outside world,
talking
is
is a
a
little
some
far.
Native Americans
And it
are
is
willing
very
to
found that
abandon their
skill is
hatred and
somewhat
similar
to
to
dragon
dragon. Some
might.
of these people
Which is also his new
and
skill.
somewhat to
Touching
trace
his
after
hands or
release.
see a
Jiang Hai
doctor.
was a
It
little
will
overwhelmed
discover
a lot
the
of
beauty
beauty
after
after
putting
putting
on
on
his
his
world.
shoes.
But it
And
has a
did
lot
not
of
go
effect
back
on
on animals.
animals.
This was a good
The
thing
smarter
for
the animal
government.
stronger
Tried.
the effect.
And it
But
was
just
also
as it
it
has
has
no
no
effect
effect
on humans.
However,
However,
humans
the
are
original
people controlling
tribes.
the
These
tribe
people
with
were
this skill.
trainers.
These people could
Everyone had a
much
different
safer.
perspective.
Although they didn't raise
so
so
naturally.
Their
Their
eyes
eyes
were
looked
not
at
quite
things
worried
also
about
different
looking
people.
at Jiang
Just
Hai
after
with
moving his
vigilance.
body.
In her words,
Sorry,
Jiang Hai
I came
took
out
out
to
the
take a
mobile
look
phone to
to
the
the
outside
outside
talking
world.
to these people.
But opened the door and got out.
She care if they
After
understood or
confirming
not.
that there
The
were
pursuit
no
of
other
a better life
found
will
nearby
not
into the
change.
forest
Jiang
and
Hai
glanced at the
there was
mobile
nothing
phone.
in sight.
Well,
Oh right,
but
the
the
phone
phone
steps
were
in
getting
places
closer
that are
and
too far
closer.
away.
Power bank.
This
Can you
guest
tell me about
please
the
go
outside
back.
world?
It
We are
seems
not
that he has
allowed
been
to walk
unconscious.
around
The
at
girl
night.
suddenly
Least a week.
changed her mood and said
After
to
getting
Jiang
into
Hai,
the driver's seat
hearing
and
her
go
words,
back, starting
Jiang
the
Hai
engine
also
looking
told
around.
her. And then connecting
The
to the
leader
mobile
here couldn't
phone.
help but say
The
to
mobile
Jiang
phone
Hai,
lit up again,
but Jiang Hai's
and then the
face
current
became
time was
more and more
displayed on
puzzled.
it. What's
Looking
wrong?
at the time,
Hearing
Jiang
the
Hai
sound
couldn't
outside
help
the
but
door.
sigh. The
It's
girl
been
who had
half a
fallen
month.
asleep at this
Yes,
time also
with this
woke
time,
up.
Jiang
She
Hai's
rubbed her
evolution.
confused eyes.
The time directly
walked to
jumped
Jiang
from
Hai's
June to
side
July
and asked him.
as the mobile
Except
phone
for
was
her
turned
tribal
on.
chief,
Countless
other
text
people
messages
didn't understand
and the like
her
jumped
language.
in.
There
There
seems
seems
to
that
be
there is
people
also a
forest
network
over
signal
there,
in the
and the
mountains
number
of the
seems
United
to be
States.
quite a lot.
So Jiang Hai's
Listening to the
network
girl's
can't
words,
be used. Jiang Hai
and he can
pointed
only
to the
receive
forest in the
text messages
distance and said to the
Jiang
girl.
Hai picked up the
But
mobile
after the
phone
girl
and looked
heard
at
Jiang
it.
Hai's
There were a
words,
total of
she was also
73
very
text
confused.
messages. She
After
glanced
all,
at the
he
situation
disappeared for
outside,
half a month,
but she couldn't
more
see
than
anything.
20 of them were
Then
sent
she
by
blinked
Eduard
and looked at
Anderson,
Jiang Hai,
Robbins
as if to
Garcia,
ask if
and
Jiang
Dulles
Hai heard
Gerard.
wrongly.
Telling
Jiang
Jiang
Hai
Hai
looked
about
at
the
her
recent
eyes
sales
and naturally
situation.
knew what her eyes
Jiang
meant.
Hai glanced at
Then
it,
he shook his
and
head
there was
very
basically
clearly.
no discrepancy.
I really heard some
The
footsteps.
money they received from
you
the
can ask
checks
them to
matched
send
the
someone
money
to
that
take a
Jiang
look.
Hai's bank account.
Anyway, it's not
There
far
were
away.
also more than 30
Seeing
messages
that the girl
sent by
didn't
Delina,
believe him,
Marion,
Jiang Hai
Aphrodite,
still said very
Chia
clearly,
Chia.
logically
Feng Yunshin,
speaking, his ears
Xiaoxi,
shouldn't
and
be
so
so
on.
good.
Basically,
After all,
they were
he was
asking
now
about
only
Jiang
8
Hai's
times the body
situation.
limit of a
There
human.
were also messages
and he didn't
sent
turn
by
into a
Chi Li
rabbit.
and Prawalton.
8 times the
They
body
also
of a
knew
human
that
really
Jiang Hai
didn't
had
have much
temporarily
effect.
left.
But he just
So they
felt that
also
there were a
sent
lot of
messages
people
to
in the
check the
forest,
situation for a
and
few
it was
days.
very likely that
But
they
after
didn't
finding
come
that
with good
Jiang Hai
intentions.
didn't reply,
He said that there
they stopped
seems to be
sending
people in the
messages.
forest over
There
there.
were also some
You can
messages
send
sent
someone
by
to take a
Moses
look.
Adams.
It's better to
mainly
believe it than
talking
not.
about the merger of those
Hearing
companies.
Jiang Hai being so
Looking
sure,
at the messages
the girl
he sent,
still didn't quite
Jiang
understand.
Hai couldn't help but
just
smile.
like what Jiang Hai
Seeing
said,
that there was nothing
it's not
particularly
far.
urgent,
Just go and take a look.
Jiang Hai threw
Hearing
the mobile
girl's
phone
words,
into the car first.
although this person
Then,
still felt
after
that
returning
Jiang
to
Hai
the
was
car
talking
and eating a
nonsense,
good meal,
he
began
began
to
to untie
someone
the
to take a
ropes
look.
that fixed the car.
Although this person
he had
was
to
a little
admit
reluctant
that the
in
dust
his
in the
heart,
forest
he
was
still
actually
trotted
not too
over,
much, ready
half
to
a
come
month
back
had
if
passed.
nothing happened.
But Jiang Hai's
the
car
moment
was
this
not
person was
particularly
about to
dirty.
run out of the tribe,
After untying
Jiang
the
Hai
safety
suddenly
rope tied
heard
to
a
the
voice
car,
in his mind.
Jiang Hai
Danger.
also got back into
Get
the
down.
car and
He
started
shouted
the engine.
first, and then
the oil in the
immediately
United
pulled the girl
States
to
was
lie
really
down.
good.
Although
After
the people
not starting
opposite
for
him
half
were
a month,
puzzled,
the
car
leader
started
also let
directly
everyone
as
to
soon as
hide.
he turned the key.
The moment they hid,
after warming
tongues
up a
of
little,
fire suddenly
Jiang
shot
Hai
out
drove
from
the
car
forest
and was ready
the
to go
person
back.
who ran out of the
But when
village
he went
was
back,
immediately
he
shot into a
naturally immediately had to report that he was safe.
First,
He called Chijia.
With the sound of
After
gunshots,
all in name,
the night
she was now in charge of Jiang Hai's family.
Screamed at the
After
top
hearing
of their
that
lungs.
Jiang Hai had
Hearing
finished
these
his
people's
business
words
and was
the
ready
men
to
in the
come
tribe
back,
woke up immediately.
not only Chijia,
This was also
but
their
everyone
instinct
else
as
breathed a
hunters.
sigh of relief.
They immediately
Then they
grabbed
heard
their
that
weapons
Jiang Hai was
and were
already
about
going
to run
back,
out,
which
but
made the
before
women
most
who
people
hadn't
could
seen
get out of
Jiang
the
Hai
house
for a long
the
time
tongue of
couldn't
fire
help but
swept
cheer.
towards the tribe
Daliana
again.
and Marion directly called Aphrodite
In an instant,
and told them the good
more
news.
than a dozen people
After
who had
chatting
just come
with
out
them
of
for
the
a
house
while,
were swept
Jiang
to the
Hai
ground
also hung up
before
the phone.
they could react.
After all,
At the same
according
time,
to the drive,
some
he should
people
be going
quietly
back tomorrow.
moved towards the tribe under the
He could
cover
talk
of the
about
fire.
it at that time.
Looking at these
Then he
people's
also
movements,
called Prawalton and
Jiang
Chili.
Hai knew that these
Hearing
people
that
were
Jiang Hai was
professionals.
fine,
If
the two
these
were
people were
relieved.
to enter the tribe,
Moreover,
then
Chili
no one in
also
the tribe
told
would be
Jiang
able
Hai
to
that the
survive.
girl named Du Ning
Thinking
was
of
really
this,
a good helper.
Jiang Hai
Not
narrowed
only
his
could she
eyes
protect
and
her,
quickly pressed
but
the
she
girl
was also
into the
very
house.
smart, while
and
he
could help her
himself
deal
moved
with a
towards
lot
the
of
direction
things.
of his car.
Jiang Hai was
Although
also
there were
very
still
happy.
some doubts about
After
Jiang
talking
Hai,
with them for a
now
while,
no one would
Jiang Hai
care
called
about
Moses
Jiang Hai's
Adams'
problem.
Adams
All the
also
people
reported
in
on
the
the
situation
situation
of
of
the
the
past few days,
but with their homemade
he had to
firearms,
admit that there were
they had to fire
specializations
4
in
or
this
5
field
shots
to kill
and he
a
was
wild
still
boar.
very strong
There
in
was
this
no
aspect.
problem in hunting,
Counting the time
but against
before
the
Jiang
enemy,
Hai left,
the gap was too
he
big.
had been attacking
Rows
these
of
companies
bullets were
for almost
fired,
20 days.
but they basically
the
didn't
first
hit
company
anything.
to collapse
The
was the
opposite
Cartwright
side's
company,
firepower was still
although the
strong,
Cartwright company
and those
later
people
rescued
who were
the market.
moving forward were
They
about
really
to
didn't
move
have
near
much
the
money.
tribe in the blink
Moreover,
of an eye.
their
The opposite
shareholders
side
didn't
weren't
have any hope
particularly
of getting
interested
hurt
in the company,
but this tribe,
about 100
in Jiang
million
Hai's
yuan
view,
was
had
invested in the
lost at least
company,
1/5
but
of
they
its
still
combat
collapsed.
power.
Taking
Fortunately,
advantage of
the opposite
collapse,
side didn't pay
Moses
too much
Adams
attention
bought
to
more than
Jiang Hai,
80% of the
so
company's
Jiang Hai
shares
secretly
at the
moved
price
to his
of
car.
17 million.
After opening
Then
the door,
he directly sold
Jiang
the
Hai
shares to a
jumped into
company
the back seat.
he had already
Here,
negotiated
he
with
breathed
in
a sigh of
exchange
relief
for $300
and then took
million
out his weapons from the back
including
seat.
the attack and
He had a
acquisition,
Desert Eagle,
Moses
and a
Adams had
semi-automatic
spent a total of about
with guns in
130
his
million.
hands.
He was no
but
longer
he had sold it
panicking.
for $300 million.
In 20 days, Jiang Hai had earned
Chapter
170
778.
million.
Boss,
Of course, this
can
was
you
also
confirm where the
subject to
thing you
tax,
want is?
but it was
You know,
not
these
that
are
heavy.
Native Americans.
This was because the
If we wait
$300
too
million
long,
was
the
obtained
American
through the
police
purchase
won't let
and
us
sale
go.
of shares.
When the sound of
course,
gunfire
the tax
echoed
on
in
the
the
stock
sky,
market couldn't be
at
as
this time
heavy
in
as
the
income
forest,
tax.
a fully
Otherwise,
armed white
if the
man
national
chewing
tax
gum
was
to the side
included,
of a man
it
who
would
was
be
playing with a dog
35%,
and said with
if
a
you buy
headache,
100
to be
million worth
honest,
of shares,
although
you
these
have to pay
mercenaries only
$35
cared
million
about money and not people.
In other words,
everyone knew
if you
how
buy
high
100
the status
million
of the
worth
Native
shares,
Americans was in
you
the
have
United
to pay
States.
$135
This was
million.
mainly related to the early
and then you
days
have
of
to
the
pay
United
$35
States.
million
It could be
when
said
you sell
that the
it.
reason why the
Isn't
Native
that cheating?
Americans were almost
Therefore,
annihilated
the tax on shares was
because
different
the
from ordinary
Americans had
taxes.
contributed the most.
But when added together,
even the British,
it didn't
who had
exceed
been the
20
most
million.
ruthless at the
That
beginning,
was to say,
had later
Jiang
given
Hai
the
earned
Alabama
$150
mountains
million
to the Native
in
Americans
20 days.
But when the
Of
Americans
course, this
fought
was
with
also
the British,
accidental.
their strength,
It was really
TSK,
because there were people who
was
wanted the
precisely
Cartwright
because
company,
of this historical
and
problem.
the directors who
So in
happened
the
to meet
United
them
States,
didn't have much
many
confidence
scholars
in
and the
the
like
company.
said all day long
Otherwise,
that the
it wouldn't
American
have been so
government
easy to
was
make
a group
money.
of ungrateful
Just like
people.
the venture
When
capital
they first
company on the
came,
other side,
it was the Native
Marion
Americans
Smith
who
was
helped
still
them
very
take root
capable.
here.
He
This
had a
was
net
also the
worth of
reason
around
why
100
Thanksgiving
million.
Day was widely
But who
believed
knew where
to
he got
exist
another $300
internationally.
million
But in
from?
fact, at the
Thanksgiving
moment,
Day
he
was
was
a
still in
holiday
a tug
formed
of
by
war
the
with
American
Moses
military
Adams in the
to
financial
celebrate
market.
their victory
But
in
Moses
the massacre
Adams
of
was
the
in the
Native
dark
Americans.
while he was in the
This
light.
was extremely
It wasn't a
ironic
problem
in the
for
eyes
him
of
to
the
play with
Americans
him.
who always
Moreover,
promoted racial
with the
equality.
$150
So
million
the
as a
Native
base,
Americans had a
Moses
special
Adams
status
felt more
in the
at
United
ease playing with
States.
him.
These
Because
mercenaries
Jiang Hai's
dared to
overall
risk
request
universal
wasn't to make
condemnation,
money,
but
and
to not
slaughter
have
the
to
Native
pay.
American tribes.
Moses
Whether
Adams
this
reported
matter
that
was
when he was
successful
dealing
or
with
not,
Marion Smith,
it would be difficult for
lost
them to
almost
survive
$20
in the
million.
United States.
But
In
Marion
the future,
Smith
they
had
could
lost
only
more
live
than
a life
$80
of
million.
escape.
Don't worry,
It was just a
I
matter
came
of
to
who
this
couldn't
village
take it
today.
first.
There is
As
no
for the
electricity
last
in this
corporation,
village, so there is
Moses
no phone.
Adams couldn't
We
help
have plenty
even
of
if he
time.
wanted to.
Hearing
After
the words
all,
of the
it was in
mercenary
Japanese
leader,
company,
a white
and
man
it
on
was
the
a
other side
family-run
smiled
company,
and
they
scratched
were not
the chin of the
listed in the
puppy in
United
his arms,
States,
and
so
said
it was
with a
very
smile,
troublesome.
I hope
In
so.
this case,
Hearing
Jiang
the white
Hai
man's
can only
words,
deal with these
the
two
man said with
troublemakers
some
first,
helplessness,
and
and
then
then
signaled
that
his men
he will
to speed
consider
up the
whether
attack.
to inject funds
At this
into
time,
Sakura
Jiang
country
Hai,
to fight
who was
against
in the
this
car,
family,
had already
However,
dialed the
this
police
risk
phone.
is quite big.
After the phone
so
rang
Jiang Hai
twice,
needs to
it
think
was
about it
picked up.
carefully.
But when the
Listening
police
to
heard
Moses
the gunshots,
Adams' report,
the police
Jiang
on the
Hai
other
also
side of the
nodded
phone
secretly.
were stunned for a
This
moment.
matter was quite
Listening
reliable.
to the sound,
continued
it
to
didn't
give him
seem like an
authorization.
ordinary gunfight.
He didn't expect to earn
Hello,
anything.
what happened
just
over
not
there?
too much loss.
The policeman
After
holding
Moses
the microphone
Adams
asked
had
Jiang
Hai's
Hai on the other
affirmation,
side of the
he
phone.
was more relieved.
This is an Indian
After
tribe in
confirming
the
these
Alabama
things,
mountains.
Jiang Hai
It
also
seems to
let
be
out
called
a sigh of
Toga.
relief.
Now, for
the
some
matter
reason,
was temporarily
they were
settled.
attacked by a group
The the rest
armed
would wait
forces
until
and
he
many
returned
people
to the
died.
manor.
Please
But
send
just
people
as
over
Jiang Hai
quickly.
finished all the
Listening
phone calls
to the police
and was ready
Jiang
to drive
Hai
with
also
peace
said
of
to the
mind,
other side of the
suddenly,
phone.
more than a
Toga
dozen
checked the
figures
exact
ran out of
location.
the forest. When they saw Jiang
Hearing
Hai's car,
Jiang Hai's urgent
they went
voice,
straight to the front
the
of
police
Jiang Hai's
officer
car
on the other
without
side
saying a
immediately
word
opened
and
the map to
surrounded
check.
Jiang Hai's car.
After confirming
Jiang
the
Hai
location,
saw these people's
he
actions
immediately
and couldn't
reported
help
the
but be
matter to the
stunned.
state police.
After stopping
This
the
was
car,
a big deal.
he also looked
Okay,
at the people
we'll
around
send
the
a
car.
helicopter over
The
right
people
away.
around the car
You
should
guys
be
hang in
Native
there.
Americans.
After
Because their
confirming
skin
the
color was
location,
Native American.
the policeman on the
At
other
this
side
time,
also said
these
to Jiang
people's
Hai,
faces were painted
Jiang Hai
with
heard his
colorful oil
words
paint
and did not say
Their
much.
upper bodies
He
were
knew
red,
that this was not
and
the
their
city,
lower bodies were
and the
also
police
wearing
could
their
arrive
ethnic
within 5
costumes.
minutes.
But there
This
were
was
still
deep in the
realistic
mountains and
clothes
forests.
inside.
It
At
would
this
take more
time,
than half an
they
hour for the
surrounded Jiang
helicopter
Hai's
to
car,
arrive.
holding
but
their
Jiang
own
Hai
homemade
was still
firearms
quite
in their
confident
hands
that they could
and
hold
looked
on
at
for
Jiang
half an
Hai
hour
with vigilance.
After hanging
"Hi,
up the
friends
phone,
in front, what's
Jiang
the matter?"
Hai climbed back
"I know
into
you're
the
people
driver's
from
seat.
Canan's unit."
Then he started
Looking
the
at
engine,
these people
turned
surrounding
the
him,
steering wheel.
Jiang Hai didn't
and went
mean to
straight
cause
to
any
the entrance
conflict.
of the tribe.
After
Putting
putting
out
out
the fire,
the
he spoke to
mercenaries
these
on the
people
other
in
side
front of him
were
in
about
Native
to kill their
American
way to the
language.
entrance of the tribe.
The sudden appearance
Chapter
of the shield gave
754.
these people a shock.
This sentence was
Jiang
taught to
Hai
him
instantly
by the
turned on
man
the high
in the
beam,
Native American
blinding
store in
these
Winthrop,
people and
although
making them
Jiang
see
Hai
clearly
doesn't know
at the
if it's
same
right.
time.
He
Aim
can
and
only
shoot.
try his
When
best
some
at this
people's
time.
vision was blocked,
Looking at the people in
Jiang
front
Hai
of him,
also opened the
Jiang
door
Hai
and
said
jumped
to
out
them
of the car.
seriously.
He shouted at the Native Americans who were
Do you
still
know the
shooting at the
Iroquois from the
back.
Canan's tribe?
Hearing Jiang Hai's
After
words,
hearing Jiang
the
Hai's
old tribal
words,
chief
these
who had
Native
just come out at
Americans
this
looked
time
at each other.
immediately
Then they
translated
walked
for
away,
Jiang Hai,
and a young
after
girl
having
walked
a
out of the
backbone.
crowd.
These
This
Native
girl has skin
Americans were
similar to
finally
that
not
of an
as
Asian,
panicked,
of course much
Fortunately,
darker.
they
Her
had
long
been
black
hunting
hair
in the
is draped
forest
behind
since
her
they were
head,
young,
and
in
she
addition,
looked
they
quite
advocated
good-looking.
bravery.
She looks to be
Although
only
they had not
14 or
killed anyone
15 years
before.
old.
Most
With
of them
baby
had
fat.
good mental
A
fortitude.
rattan is
They
tied to her
found some
head,
hidden and
and
protected
there is a straight
places,
feather on it.
and used the
She is
indigenous
wearing an
weapons
animal
in their
skin
hands
top,
to shoot at
the
the
kind
people
that
in
is
front
very
of them.
short,
Although compared
exposing
to
her
the
firepower
and covering
it was
her
still
upper
more
body,
than a level lower.
she was wearing a
At
skirt
least
made
it
of
was still
animal
a gun.
skin.
If
And
they
a
were
pair of
hit,
hiking
they would be
shoes that
injured
were
or even
imported from
killed.
the outside world.
F***CK,
Yes,
where did
I
the
am
car
from
come
Winthrop.
from?
My name
At
is
this
Jiang
time,
Hai. Not
our
only
town
were the
has a
Native
good
Americans
relationship
calmed
with the
down,
Iroquois,
but the
they
people
have
in
a
the
Native
forest
American
were also
store
confused.
there that we
The
cooperate with.
mercenary leader looked
Looking
at the car
girl
and
in
couldn't
front
help
of him,
but be
who
stunned.
asked him in
He
English,
knew very well
Jiang
that
Hai
it was a
immediately
bulletproof
explained,
car. If there was a car, it
you are
meant
not
that
in
there
the
was an
same
owner
group
of
as
the
those
car.
outsiders?
As a modern person,
Looking at Jiang Hai
it was
in front of her,
impossible for the
the
owner
girl
to not
asked
have a
doubtfully,
mobile phone.
What
If he had a
outsiders?
mobile phone
Hearing
and
her
called the
words,
police,
Jiang Hai
the
looked
police
at her
would
with
come
some
in less than
confusion.
half an hour.
Outsiders?
He knew this better
He
than
doesn't
anyone
know.
else.
It seems
Didn't
that he
he say
really
that there
doesn't
would
know
be no
about the
problem?
outsiders.
Thinking that he might
Hearing
have to
Jiang
live a
Hai's
life of
words and
exile
looking
in the
at Jiang
future,
Hai's eyes,
the mercenary
the girl
leader
was sure
couldn't
that
help
Jiang
but
Hai
shout.
should really
He
not
grabbed
know
the
about
collar
the
of the white
outsiders.
man and shouted.
In fact,
The
she
white
just
man
said
didn't
that to
expect that Jiang Hai would be
if
here.
Jiang Hai
For a
immediately
moment,
denied
he
or
was also a
hesitated.
little confused.
It proved that there was
When the
something
mercenary
wrong with
leader
Jiang
pulled him
Hai.
up, he also
But now,
reacted.
Jiang Hai's reaction proved that he might
What's
really
the
not
use
know.
of talking nonsense
So she said
now?
to a strong
We've
man
already
beside
fought.
her,
Using her
immediately
native
take down this
language,
place.
Jiang
and
Hai
then
did
kill
not
all of
understand
them.
these words.
Otherwise, we're all
but
done
he knew
for.
that she should be
This
asking
person
this
was
strong
also
man.
a ruthless
At
person.
the same time,
He directly
Jiang
broke
Hai was
free
also
from the
looking at the
mercenary
strong
leader's
man
hand
and
and shouted
that
loudly,
he was the leader of
"This
these
is not
people.
over."
He was
The
about
mercenary leader
190
glared
centimeters
fiercely
tall,
at this person,
which was
and
not
cursed in his
common
heart.
among the Native
He had
Americans.
no choice but to
He was
charge
very
now.
strong,
Following
and
his
his upper
hand
body was
gesture,
red. The
full of
subordinates
scars
who
and
were
strong
originally
muscles.
moving in an
At
orderly
first
manner
glance,
rushed up
it
immediately.
was obvious that he
now
was
they were
not
going to
someone
risk
to be
their
trifled
lives.
with.
Although
While
they were
Jiang
fast,
Hai was
Jiang
looking
Hai
at
was
him.
faster.
He was also
After
looking at
making the
Jiang
Native
Hai.
Americans
We
quiet
have no
down,
intention to have
he
a
also
conflict
found a
with
position
outsiders,
and set
but
up
we
the
are in the
August.
middle of our ceremony.
Then, he used the
If you are
scope to
really
look
not
at the
one of
people
those
in front of
outsiders
him.
who came to
Although
cause
Jiang
trouble,
Hai's August
then we
was
will send someone
semi-automatic,
to contact
which
the
meant that he
Iroquois
had to pull out
and
the
let them
trigger
prove
bit
your
by bit.
identity.
His
Then you can
magazine
leave.
had already changed
The
from
Native
5
Americans
rounds
were
to a
almost
normal
wiped
30
out by
round
the
magazine.
Americans.
Pulling out
So
the
it was
trigger
impossible
bit
to
by
say
bit
that
was
they
enough
did
to
not
cause
hate
a
the
lot of trouble
Americans.
for these guys.
But in reality,
How should one put it? 3 consecutive sounds
they
were
were beaten
heard.
into submission.
The 3 mercenaries
because
who
if the
rushed the
Americans
fastest
really
trembled
wanted to,
and fell down
they
weakly.
could really wipe
Their
out all the
companions
Native
went
Americans.
forward to take a look,
But the Americans
and found
wanted
that
to
the 3
show
of them were almost the
humanitarianism.
same.
They
They
began
were shot
to
in the
protect
throat
the Native
and died.
Americans.
These
Protect
mercenaries
their
were
habitat.
naturally armed to the
Although
teeth.
there was not much
They were
left,
fully equipped
and
with
protect their
bulletproof vests and
civilization
helmets.
culture.
There were
It was
only
because
2
of this
places
show
that
that the
weren't
forest
bulletproof.
where the Native
One
Americans
was their
were
throat,
hiding was
which was
protected.
already covered
The
with
Native
oil
Americans
paint,
were really
and the
scared.
other was their eyes.
They were really afraid
Anyone
that
who
the
had shot an
Americans would wipe them out. That it wasn't particularly difficult to hit the head.
Still hated
However,
the Americans.
to hit the throat, most of the troops
that was really not
maintained
easy.
the principle of
This
don't
was also
provoke me,
because Jiang
and I
Hai
won't
had
provoke
8
times the vision of
The
an
tribe
ordinary
that Jiang
person.
Hai encountered
In
at
addition
this
to the
time
scope
was
and
such
his
a neutral
strength,
tribe.
the recoil
If
of the
Jiang
gun
Hai
was
did
zero.
not know the Iroquois
Semi-automatic weapon.
These people might have
protect your
captured
eyes and
Jiang
throat.
Hai.
He
And
still
then
has
notified
2 bullets.
the American government
Move
to
over.
come and take him.
Although they had
But
lost
since
3
Jiang
teammates,
Hai knew the Iroquois,
once they heard the
he
gunshots,
could just let the
the
Iroquois
people who
come and
rushed
take a
forward
look.
already knew
This
about
was the
Jiang
principle
Hai's
of having
situation.
acquaintances.
After a loud
And it was
command,
easy to get
these
things
people
done
all
wherever
shrunk
you
their
went.
necks into their clothes
After the girl
and then
translated the
jogged
man's
forward.
words,
Looking at these
Jiang
people's
Hai nodded
movements,
to show that he
Jiang Hai
understood.
tried to fire
Then
2
should
more
I wait
shots.
here or what?
Sure enough,
Jiang Hai didn't
these 2
intend
shots
to be
only
enemies
used
with
the
these
impact
people.
to knock down
Plus,
2 people.
he didn't have anything
However,
urgent to do.
these 2 people
So he
immediately
opened the
got
door
up
and jumped
and continued to move forward. After indicating that he wasn't a threat, Jiang Hai purposely waited for a while. You can drive your steel monster to our tribe. These people thought that Jiang Hai only had a 5-round magazine. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, in an instant, several people translated to the middle-aged man. As soon as the middle-aged man thought for a while, their flaws were naturally exposed. And then said to Jiang Hai, looking at these people in front of him, Jiang Hai breathed a sigh of relief. He then got back into the car and started the engine. And 4 more people Native Americans lived in the Alabama mountains on this piece of land. They were in the eastern part of the United States. When the leader heard the first shot, it was not an exaggeration to say that every inch of land was worth an inch of gold to the ground. Although they did not have a good relationship with the American government, let's be careful. They could not only rely on the forest to be self-sufficient. The leader secretly cursed. They also needed to exchange medicine and daily necessities regularly, and continued to run towards this side in the same posture as before. They would send some people to bring their things to places they believed in. Therefore, although the August is a rifle, cars before, this gun is a civilian version, surprised by and its power is clearly castrated. However, they were still quite interested in Jiang Hai's car. The reinforced concrete wall. Slowly followed nor can it penetrate their helmets drove into the bulletproof vests. After driving for about half an hour, guys have begun to defend themselves. A village made of wood and stone near an exposed mountain corner in the distance. Jiang Hai really didn't care much about guns before. There were about 300 people gathered in the middle of the village. For the first time, he was interested in guns. 300 people was a big tribe. If he had a sniper rifle at this time, as Jiang Hai's car drove over, he would feel happy just thinking about it. There were men and women, old and young. Jiang Hai looked at Jiang Hai's car with great interest, who was shooting a gun in the distance. Jiang Hai was also looking at the tribe and threw the rifle to him. This tribe was slightly better than the African tribes he had seen on TV before. He had never used such a good gun before, but it was only slightly better. Jiang Hai looked at Patton and whistled at him. After all, they were still living in their own culture. There is a scope on it. There were not many modern influences. Looking at his puzzled eyes, but there were not many of them either. The August is useless. The clothes here, so he will use it as a national costume. As for Jiang Hai, from modern he still has the Desert Eagle. Bed sheets, quilts, this is the most important toilet paper. And so on were all from civilized society, within a range of 50 meters, society, although it is not as good as a sniper rifle. Naturally, it is at least better than the civilian version of the August. Washing machines, glancing at the approaching people, computers, they were about 30 meters away. As Jiang Hai's car stopped in an open space in front of the tribe, jumped up and fired 7 shots also got out of the car. Of course, he still had a lot of food in his hand. These 7 bullets instantly killed 4 people. He distributed it to the children who came out of the tribe. Jiang Hai was in the air. After these children took the food was not particularly accurate. They were not in a hurry to eat. So one of the 2 was injured in the hand. Instead, they looked at Jiang Hai and the car over there curiously. There was also a bullet that flew out and missed. So they knew what a car was, in the front but anxious. These children didn't attack. So they were still that almost curious. Half of the vanguard force he brought was lost. Just as Jiang Hai distributed the children's without food saying a word, and walked into the tribe, he directly led the crowd to the main gate surrounded by some people. At this time, he spoke to Jiang Hai in a slightly stiff English, glancing at the people rushing over. Jiang Hai was ready to attack again. The girl who had been following Jiang Hai introduced to Jiang Hai. And these guys who had been watching him for a long time sent a magazine of bullets over. Serious. The bullets hit his shield, solemnly, but the shield was indeed strong. Can you explain your purpose of coming here? As good as the antlers. Looking at Jiang Hai, none of these bullets hit it. The old man looked at him, although the glass has long been broken into pieces. I'm from Huaxia. It did not crack. In our Huaxia, Jiang Hai really bought the saying that cultivation is to be close to nature. Twice. So I came here to cultivate my body and just rely on the shield. I have been in this forest for 15 days. And I'm just about to return today. Carried the element hearing of attack. The old man's words, in an instant, Jiang Hai said the other side of the door open. In fact, but he was just bullshitting. His head out but from there has to be a reason. In. It's better to come up with a reason than to be the embarrassed hit here. The knees of 2 people. Huaxia, the mysterious east. I heard that you know the people of the Kanaza tribe. At a distance of about 10 meters, explanation. 50 caliber Desert Eagle hit the knees of 2 people. Jiang Hai even if they were bulletproof vests, but he still had to say what needed to be said. Then the old man covered their legs and screamed as they fell down. Yes, I'm from Winthrop. However, our town has a cooperation with the Iroquois. They opened a small shop in my entrance of the tribe. If it's the person in charge over there, he should know me. He made a gesture to the Native Americans and explained to the old man. And these Native Americans understood. He also said for a tribe like this that it must be the person in charge. The most was the strong. Jiang Hai couldn't guarantee that the ordinary people would know him. Jiang Hai had fought 8 battles in a row. I've already sent someone to inform the people of the Kanaza tribe. Now, after watching them fight for a long time, I'll have to trouble you to rest in the tribe. Not a single person was killed. However, it just so happens that we're offering sacrifices. He instantly killed more than a dozen people. You outsiders should be quite interested in these things. When Jiang Hai said to retreat, Jiang Hai didn't seem to be lying. Didn't disobey. The old man didn't immediately took their things and ran back. Instead, he smiled and said to Jiang Hai, "It could be rebuilt in the future." Jiang Hai
However, if
also
people
knew that he
died,
wasn't
there would
prepared
be
to have a
nothing left.
conflict with these people.
Seeing that everyone
So
was
he let him
retreating,
rest here.
Jiang Hai
After
stepped
talking
on
to
the
the
accelerator,
Jiang
and
Hai
rushed
walked
towards
into
the
the
people
Indian
in front
of
of
him.
Then,
After all these
Jiang
people
Hai
were made
followed
of
the
flesh
people
and
who
blood,
brought him in.
it was
and
impossible
walked
for
to the
them
side
to
of the
withstand
square in
Jiang
the
Hai's
distance.
collision.
After
Under
finding
the
an
leadership
empty
of the
space
leader,
to sit down,
they immediately dodged
Jiang
to
Hai
the
asked
sides.
the little girl
However,
who could speak
the
English
moment they
next to
dodged,
him.
Jiang Hai
"What's going
opened
on
the car
today?
door.
Before
and
you
fired
met
the
me,
remaining 5
were you trying to
bullets.
catch someone?"
Although the recoil
Looking
of
at the
this
girl
gun
in
was
front
very
of him,
strong, Jiang
it was
Hai
still
asked
0
with some
for
doubts.
Jiang Hai.
Now that
This
he was
time,
here,
there was no
he still
obstruction.
felt that it was a little
After
foggy.
killing 5
He
people
didn't
with
know
5
what was
bullets,
going on at all. Jiang Hai
It's
turned
like
the steering
this.
wheel
Today
and
is our
rushed into the
sacrifice
village
event.
again.
A
In
few
an
days
instant,
ago,
he passed
a group
the
of
square
people
where
came
today's
over
competition
and
was
said that
held.
they were enthusiasts.
Behind the square,
They wanted
there
to
was a
film
row
the
of
process
stone
of our
houses.
sacrifice.
These houses
Our
were
chief
where the
agreed
tribal
at that
chiefs
time,
and elders lived.
but during the sacrifice
However,
in the
at this
morning,
time, it was
when
crowded
the
with
offerings
people.
were being offered,
The old and weak
these
were at the
people
back,
suddenly attacked,
and the young and
injured
strong
the
who had
warriors of our
retreated were
tribe.
using these
They even
houses as
snatched
their
the
last
offerings.
defense.
Hearing
Jiang
the
Hai
girl's
stopped
words,
the car in front
Jiang
of the
Hai
houses.
thought of a movie he had
He took
watched
his remaining
before.
magazines
It was
and
called
bullets
Operation
and ran
Eagle.
to the row of houses.
At the beginning,
when they
stole
saw
the tribe's
Jiang Hai running
gemstones.
back,
In
the
the
eyes
end,
of all the people
nothing
in the
happened
tribe
to the
lit up.
gemstones.
But he got into trouble when he drank the holy water. Could the
Chapter
offerings of this
759.
tribe be very
Sorry
valuable?
to trouble you.
Are the
I
offerings
didn't
of your
expect
tribe
you
to
to
be
be
involved
involved
in such
with
trouble?
some doubts in his heart.
Looking at Jiang Hai
couldn't
the
help but
patriarch
ask her,
said helplessly,
"Valuable?
if it wasn't
Hearing
for
Jiang
Jiang
Hai's
Hai's
words,
perhaps
the
at
girl
this
couldn't
time,
help but be a
these
little
people would have
confused.
already killed
They
their
lived
way
here
into the tribe
and didn't have
with
any
the firepower
of
of
these
these
people.
Oh,
It was
so
likely that
his
his
tribe
tribe
would
would
be
be
wiped
things.
out today.
Hearing the
At the
girl's
thought
words,
of this,
Jiang Hai
he couldn't
explained
help
to
but
her,
feel sorrow
"It
in his
can't be
heart.
exchanged for
He sighed
anything.
helplessly.
You'll know when you
It's
see
okay
it."
if it's troublesome.
Hearing Jiang Hai's
After
words,
all, the girl
I
shook
can't
her
just
head
stand
and said,
by and do nothing.
Then she pointed into
After
the
all,
distance.
if these people come
because
in,
the
I will
ceremony
die
was
too.
disrupted just
Jiang
now.
Hai waved his
It had
hand,
to be restarted
indicating
now.
that the
The chief
patriarch
who spoke
didn't
to
need
Jiang
to say
Hai
this.
just now
He
appeared
looked
on the
at the
high
mercenaries
platform
in
in
the
front of
distance
them,
who were
after
moving
saying a
forward
lot of
quickly
words
after
that
he
Jiang
left.
Hai couldn't
"What do we do
understand.
now?" A
Do
few
we run?
strong tribesmen
Seeing
brought out
Jiang
a few
Hai
offerings.
looking outside,
Jiang Hai
many
took a
people
look.
in the tribe
These
could see the
offerings were really
situation in the
a cow, a
distance
sheep,
clearly.
and a dog.
Tarak
The cow
walked
was
to
a
Jiang
very
Hai's
ordinary
side
Angus
and whispered
breed.
to Jiang Hai,
But because it wasn't
"We can't
taken care of
escape,
very
and
carefully,
we don't have to.
although it
I
was
just
strong,
called the police
the
station.
hair on its body
They
was
said
a
that
little
they will
black
arrive
and
in
not
half
very
an hour."
bright.
Now
After
almost
all,
20
Jiang
minutes
Hai
have
had
passed.
raised a cow for
As
2
long
years.
as we hold on
This
for
cow
another
wasn't
10
worth
minutes,
much.
we will
The
be
sheep
almost
was the
there.
same.
It was
Looking
just
at his
an
watch,
ordinary boar goat.
Jiang Hai
What was there
calculated
to
the time
snatch?
and
The
said to the
last
people
dog,
around
he
him.
didn't know what kind
Hearing
of dog
Jiang
it
Hai's
was.
words.
Anyway,
Although
it
the
didn't look
people
very
in this
good,
tribe
but it
weren't
wasn't
very
small.
friendly to the police outside.
It should be
They
a
were
meat
still
dog.
willing to help.
What did they snatch?
However,
Someone
looking at
came
these
to
three
save them.
things, they didn't
This
look
was an
valuable.
out-and-out good thing.
Jiang Hai was
Hearing
a little
Jiang
confused.
Hai's words,
They
they
snatched the
decided to
dog.
wait for another
Hearing
10
Jiang
minutes
Hai's words,
before
the girl
saying
said
anything
seriously,
else.
"Dog,
Okay,
what
after
the
this
hell?
matter, but
You will
hearing
be
the
the
great
girl's words.
benefactor of our
Jiang
tribe,
Hai was also
we will
confused.
definitely repay you.
Snatched the dog.
Hearing Jiang
What kind
Hai's
of method
words,
is this?
the patriarch
Could it be
took a
that there
deep
are
breath
dog
and
fans
looked
in the
at
United
Jiang Hai.
States?
Hearing
With
the
a self-deprecating
patriarch's
smile,
words, Jiang Hai smiled.
Jiang Hai
This
looked
tribe
at the
is
dog
so
again.
poor.
He was
What else
very
can they
sure that
repay
it
me?
wasn't an expensive
Thinking about
breed.
it, Jiang
What's there
Hai
to
felt a
snatch?
little funny.
It seems
In
that
his
dog
opinion,
fans all over
the
the world
so-called
are very
repayment was
strange.
probably some
At
flower
this time,
ginseng, the patriarch
antlers, and the
finished
like.
praying.
However,
As his words
he didn't
fell,
say it out loud.
all the people in the
After
tribe
all,
stood up
in
and
this
began
tribe,
to shout.
these things are the most
Jiang Hai
valuable.
looked at them and
Others
stood up
took
as
the
well.
most valuable
But
things
he didn't say
and made
anything.
friends with you.
At this time,
Even if you don't
the
like
few
them,
strong men
as long
who
as you
brought the
know how to
offerings
be a
over there
person,
also moved.
you won't say it
They
out loud at
directly
this
put
time.
down the 3 animals,
So Jiang Hai
and then
just
began
thanked the
to
other
bleed.
party.
As
And
soon
then
as the
arranged
knife
for
went
these
in,
people to
the
be
blood
stationed.
spurted out.
And how
It
can the
looked
old
very
patriarch
shocking,
not see
but
through
for Jiang
Jiang
Hai,
Hai's
who was
thoughts?
used to seeing
He saw
cattle
that
and
Jiang
sheep
Hai
Hai didn't care about the things he wanted to repay his kindness. It couldn't be that those people couldn't bear such a scene. Jiang Hai didn't know what he wanted to repay his kindness. Thinking of this, he shook his head. At the same time, in this world, breathed a sigh of relief. The law of the jungle is mainly followed. Before this, the weak are prey to the strong. He didn't particularly believe Jiang Hai. People's kindness is also placed on these animals, just to deceive him of Jiang Hai himself raised therefore, dogs. Sometimes, but he didn't there was nothing wrong with being a little more careful. Like that. Jiang Hai didn't know that the old patriarch had set a trap for him. When they were killing the dogs, after he arranged on the other side deliberately told them to look carefully before shooting. They were afraid that the people outside were crazy. These people. If Jiang Hai wanted to run up to save the dogs, they would be able to stop him immediately with the guns in their hands. Fortunately, no matter how did not have such thoughts. They won't have after the three animals were killed. These guns can't even penetrate the opponent's leather shoes, and everyone sat down again. After all, then the shoes are inlaid with a layer of steel. That Jiang Hai did not sat in his position. After they were done, the bullets, the young lady deliberately told Jiang Hai that they were praying. Turok also came over and squatted beside Jiang Hai. or that their family members would be healthy,
there anything I
and
can
live a
help
long
with?
life?
Looking at Jiang
In
Hai,
fact, Turok asked
the American
curiously,
government had
given these Native Americans
yes,
their own
after I
territory.
finished the bullets,
They didn't just
help me
leave them
reload the
here
magazine
and let them
just
fend
reload
for
it like
themselves.
this. 7
The
bullets
medical
per
treatment
magazine
and other things
Hearing
were
her
done
words,
quite well.
Jiang Hai was
In the
stunned
United
for a
States,
moment. Seeing a doctor
originally,
was a huge
he wanted
expense.
to refuse.
However,
But after
if one
thinking
paid
about
for
it,
medical
it
insurance
seems
in a
that there
public
is still
hospital,
something he can
it
help
would be
with.
free of charge.
So he taught Turok
Of course,
how to
there was
reload
a
the
queue in
bullets.
public hospitals.
Turok is only 18
It was just
years
a matter
old
of
this
whether
year,
one could
but
afford
she has
it or
already
not.
played with guns.
There was no queue
and
in
most
private
importantly,
hospitals.
her strength
but the price
isn't small.
In the
Even
United
if the
States,
spring is strong,
doctors were
she
a
can
group
still
of people
reload
with
it.
a high income.
This way,
Of course,
Jiang
it
Hai
was
won't
the same
have to
in
worry
China.
about it.
Jiang Hai
After he
knew that
finished
if he
talking
said
with
that,
Turok,
people would
those
definitely
people have
say
already
that he was
entered the
talking
village.
nonsense.
There are more than
However,
40
it happened
people in
right
the front.
beside him.
Well,
This was
there are
indeed
more than
something
20
that had
people
happened.
left.
It was
These
just
people
that the
were
doctors
basically
in the
killed
country
by
knew
Jiang
how to
Hai.
behave
They
better than the
immediately
doctors
surrounded the
overseas.
village.
They would
and
not
then more
easily
than 20
reveal their
people
wealth.
slowly walked
Wouldn't
into
they
the
be
village.
waiting for others
Among
to
them,
report them?
more than a dozen
Therefore,
people are
it seemed that
mercenaries,
the doctors in
and
the
5
country
or
did
6
not
people
earn that
are wearing
much.
casual clothes.
Anyway, the lives
They
of
look like
these
a group
Native
of
Americans,
backpackers.
other
It's
than
them.
being far away from
Seeing these
civilization,
people walking
were
into the
pretty
village
good.
for
Turok
medical
can't help
treatment,
but gritted her
safety,
teeth and
to
snorted.
eating,
Who are
drinking,
they?
and going to the
Hearing
toilet.
Turok's words,
The American
Jiang
government
Hai
is
asked
very
with some
good at
doubts.
it.
He
Jiang
really
Hai
doesn't
and the
know who
rest
these
could not
people
help
are.
but be envious.
They are the people who
After
caused
the
trouble
prayers,
at our
it
ceremony
was time
today.
for the biggest
They
show
stole
of
a
the
dog
day.
and left the
They
tribe.
would perform their
We were
martial
chasing
arts
them
to
when
the
we
heavens.
met you.
In fact,
Hearing
it was
Jiang
similar
Hai's
to a
words,
martial arts
Turok
competition.
turned her head and said to
The
him,
Native Americans
"They are those
did
dog
not refer
fans."
to a single
Hearing
race.
Turok's words,
The name
Jiang Hai was a
represented
bit
all the
confused.
indigenous people
When did
living
dog
in the
fans
American
become so
continent.
arrogant?
Except
In
for
order
the
to
Inuit
save the
in
dog,
Alaska,
they even
it did
dared
not
to
refer
send
to a
mercenaries
single
to
ethnic
slaughter the
group or
village.
race. Jiang Hai
According
could
to the
only
little
say
girl's
that they were
words,
worthy of
they
being
should be
called
a branch
America's
of the
dog
legendary
fans.
Sioux clan.
Their game was more
However, this Sioux
sophisticated
clan
than
no longer
Huaxia.
existed.
At most,
Everyone knew this
Huaxia
very
could
well.
force people to
Their branch
apologize,
could only be
but the
considered
United
a very,
States
very
could
distant
really
branch.
exterminate their
Such a
entire
small
family.
tribe couldn't
But
pass
whether
down
these
their own
guys
fighting
came to avenge the
techniques
dog
like
or
the
not,
Mongols and
Jiang
Huaxia.
Hai's life is still in his
Therefore,
own hands.
rather than a wrestling
Looking
match,
at these people
it was
coming
more
over,
like a competition.
Jiang Hai opened his
Punches
gun
and
with a
kicks
snap,
were allowed,
and the
but
moment
they were
he
not
fired,
allowed to hit the
Patton on the
opponent's
other
face.
side also pulled the trigger.
They were not
Jiang
allowed
Hai
to
has to
deliberately
admit
injure
that
the
Patton
opponent.
is a very good hunter.
As long as the opponent
and he has
fell
already
to the
shot a
ground,
lot of times,
it was considered a
and
loss.
he has already found
As
the
the little
feeling.
girl introduced the rules of the competition
This
to
time,
Jiang Hai's
Jiang
bullet
Hai
went
also
directly into a
listened.
person's
At
mouth.
this point,
and
the
Patton's
three
bullet
beasts had
went
already been
directly
killed.
through the scope of
The
a person's
sacrificial
gun,
ceremony
directly
was brought to the
penetrating
front
the
of the
person's
altar.
eye.
After
With
the
bang,
order
the
was
person was
given,
dead.
the strong
Seeing
women
that they
and
lost
the
two
old men
teammates
went
in
to
an
prepare the
instant.
cattle and
The
sheep.
vanguard team
They were going to
immediately
hold a
started
party
to fight
here.
back.
Jiang
But
Hai
the
was not a
bullets hit the
prisoner
stone
now,
and were
but a
not
guest.
bounced off.
The old
And
chief
there was
said
no way
that
to
Jiang
leave
Hai
too
was a
much
guest
space.
from afar.
Now the rifle
Therefore,
bullets
he
are
could also
5,
participate in the
56
ceremony
millimeters
and eat the
in order
food.
to reduce
The
the
young
wound and
people
cause
quickly
secondary
formed a circle,
damage. Followed
so the
by another
penetration
old
is
man.
far worse than
He should
7.
be a cabinet elder of
62
the tribe.
millimeters.
These
Foreigners
stone
didn't
houses
seem to
7,
be called cabinet
62
elders.
millimeters bullets
Anyway, that
can't
was
even
what it
penetrate.
meant.
As
Let
the voice
alone
of the
these
man
small
fell,
caliber bullets.
2 Native Americans
For a while,
came
the
to the
sound
middle
of
of the
gunfire
crowd
could be heard.
after
But
saluting
it did
each
not
other.
cause any
They made
damage
a
to these
gesture
Native
and started
Americans.
fighting.
Instead,
Jiang Hai was also
it was
outside,
the kind of shotgun
watching the
used
fight
by
inside.
the Native Americans.
He had to admit
the kind
that
that
these
uses
people's
deer
fighting
bullets.
techniques were
Once
really
they are
rough.
shot, it will
They
scatter.
rarely dodged.
Although the
Basically,
penetration
you
is
take a
not
kick
good,
from me.
the impact
I take a
is
punch
not
from you.
ordinary.
Compared
For a
to
while,
Bell and the
these
others,
people were
their
stunned,
techniques were
and they
very
quickly
ordinary.
retreated.
No, it should
After
be said that
retreating
they had
50
no
meters
techniques
away,
at all.
The
But
guns
when
of the
thought
Native
these
Americans
people's
were no
rules,
longer effective.
Jiang Hai felt that if
Jiang
they didn't
Hai's
fight
pistol
like
was
this,
also out of
there was
action,
no other way,
except for the
because
August.
in this
Everyone else
competition,
was finished.
if you fell to the
But
ground,
at this
you would
distance,
lose.
it was
You
almost
could place your
impossible
hands
for
on
the
the ground
August
to shoot
but
through
if
the
your
scope
knees
again.
or other parts of
Therefore,
your body he fell to the
Patton
ground,
also put down his
then
gun
you
and
would
looked
lose.
outside with a fierce
Dodging would
face.
cause your center of
Patton was
gravity
also
to
looking
shift.
outside with
If
a
you
fierce
fell,
expression
then
on
you
his
would
face.
lose unjustly.
For a while, whether
Therefore,
it is inside
this
or
kind of
outside the room,
competition
it
was
was
more
quiet.
about who was stronger
The originally
and
lively
whose body
battlefield
was
cooled
sturdier.
down at this time.
Of course, there were
But
also
everyone
some
knew
small
that this
tricks.
was just the calm
Looking
before
at the
the
two
storm,
people in front
and
of him,
soon,
Jiang
there
Hai
will be
was
a
worried
side
about
that will
their pain.
destroy the balance.
He couldn't help but
These
ask
guys have a
doubtfully,
strong will
"They
to
are
resist,
fighting like this,
and I don't know
doesn't it
why,
hurt?"
but they have
Hearing
advanced
Jiang
weapons.
Hai's words, the
One
girl
of them is
chuckled
very
and said,
strong.
"It
And
hurts,
many of
but
our
we have
people
to
have
endure
fallen
it.
in his hands.
Whoever wins in
If
the
we
end
attack,
will become
the
the
losses
tribe's
may be
number
very
one
heavy.
warrior."
And
At this
even if
time,
he isn't the number
the people
one
who
warrior,
came in later
he will
quickly
go up
searched
and
the
show
other
his
rooms in the
bravery
village
and win the hearts
group
of the
of
girls
people
in the
also
tribe.
arrived at the
If
front
he is
line.
lucky and
When
wins
the commander
title
of the
the
front line
line
saw
warrior,
these people,
there will
he
be a
immediately
special
ran
reward
to
at
a man
night.
and saluted him.
Hearing what she said,
Then he
Jiang Hai
whispered
grinned.
something to the
He
commander.
roughly understood
"Sir,
what
you're
these
right.
people meant.
Mother died
These Native
damn
Americans mainly
looking
lived
at the
in their
stone
own
ice house in
civilization,
front of him,
although they
the
now
mercenary
ate cooked
leader
meat
scolded
and knew
with
how
a
to use
serious
seasoning.
face. The
Then he
difference
looked at the
between
people
them and
wearing
civilized
mountaineering
society
gear around
wasn't
him.
as big as
Now
imagined.
it's time for this guy
In
to
this
make
aspect,
a decision.
they still
The
maintain
people
their own
inside,
customs.
listen up, we are
This
old
made
friends.
Jung Hai feel
We
quite
came
interested.
here only for that thing.
At this time,
If you
the
take
battle
that
on
thing
the
out,
field was
I
also
won't hurt you.
decided.
If
A
you
big
don't take
man
it
named
out,
Bazakin
the
won the
people
battle.
around me won't be so good-tempered.
Under his last
Seeing
attack,
the mercenary
his
leader's
opponent's
words,
knees fell to
the
the
man
ground,
who had been
and
leading
he
the
lost
dog
the battle.
here came over
After this
and shouted
person
at the
lost,
people in the
he
stone
swaggered
house
back to
with
the
a gloomy
tribe.
face.
This was the
Hearing
treatment
his
they got
words,
after
Jung
winning
Hai,
once.
who was in
There
the
was
stone
no
house
such
at
thing
this
as
time,
taking turns
couldn't
to
help
fight.
but frown.
If you beat
Didn't
one
these
person,
people come
you
here
would
to
enter the
avenge the
second
dog?
round.
Then,
Until there was no one left,
it
the
seemed that
winner
this
would
world
enter the
didn't have
second
people
round.
who would slaughter
Then
a
the winner
village
would
for a
enter the
dog.
second round.
After all,
The
this
third
was a
round,
civilized
the
society.
fourth round,
Interesting.
and so on until there was
Muttering
only
in a low
one
voice,
person left.
Jung Hai
That
picked up
person
a
would be
dagger
the strongest
and made a small
as
hole
he
in
walked
the wall.
in.
Then
The
he
next
turned
pair
on the
of people
phone.
didn't need
He
to
was
be
going to
urged this
record who
time.
these people
They
were.
directly stood
He
up
knew
and
that it was
started
impossible
fighting.
to make
It
all
was
of them
simple
stay
and crude.
today. But
Before
Jung
the
Hai
police
watched
came,
with great
they
interest.
would probably escape.
He had to admit
But
that it
knowing
was
your
quite
enemy
interesting
is
to
the
watch
only
a
way
fight.
to win 100
At least
battles.
men like this
Jung
feeling.
Hai at least
Not
had to
everyone
know who
liked
he
to
was
watch
fighting
dodging.
tonight.
Unknowingly,
Then he turned on the video
after the
and
sixth
Jung
pair
Hai
of people
recorded the
finished
situation
fighting,
outside.
the sky was
I
gradually
don't know what
getting
you are
dark.
talking about.
When Jung
We
Hai
saw
woke
that you
up,
were
it was
travelers
already noon.
and specially
After
invited you to
eating, coming
participate
here and
in our
watching the
worship
ceremony,
activities.
it was almost
But not
3
only were you
o'clock.
not grateful,
Plus, after
you
so
even
many
attacked
fights,
us.
the
Now you
sky
want
was
to
already
slaughter
a
the
bit
village.
westward.
You are
In
really
the middle,
the
the old
descendants
chief
of the
came
Americans.
to talk to Jung Hai.
You have the same
After
personality.
all, the Oroki tribe was
Hearing
a
the
bit far
word
from the
from
man
here.
outside.
Most importantly,
the chief couldn't
they
help
also
but
had a
shout.
ceremony today.
Hearing the chief's words,
So the people in charge
Jung Hai
couldn't
felt
leave.
that the people
At least
outside
they knew
couldn't
that
help
Jung
but
Hai
freeze.
wouldn't be in danger
Although the
here.
mercenaries didn't
So it
care
didn't
about
matter
right or
if they
wrong,
left or not,
and only cared
the
about
chief
money.
told the people of
They
the
were
tribe
also
to
human.
take good care of
They
Jung
also
Hai
felt that these
and
people
let
were a
Jung
little
Hai
too
rest here
shameless.
for a night.
Hey,
They would
you can say
definitely
whatever you
come
want.
tomorrow morning.
If you don't
Jung
hand that
Hai
thing
didn't
over
care
today,
about this.
don't think
After
that a
all,
single
he
person
had been
in your
out for
village
so
will
long.
walk out alive.
One night wouldn't make
Hearing
a
the
difference.
chief's words, the
Most
man didn't
importantly,
care.
then he
couldn't
smiled
leave now
lightly
even if he
and
wanted
threatened
to.
in a low voice.
Without the Oroki
I don't
tribe to
understand what
explain
you
the
are talking
situation
about.
to him.
After
It
hearing
wouldn't be
his words,
easy for
the
him to
chief
leave.
said with certainty.
Most importantly,
Hearing
it
the
was quite
chief's final
interesting
answer,
to watch them
the
fight.
people here
As
couldn't
the
help
sky
but change
gradually
their
darkened,
expressions.
the women
The
and
mercenary
elders in the
leader
distance
also
looked
looked
at
at
the
the
man
man
after
beside him,
preparing dinner.
whether or not
Under
to
the
fight,
starry sky,
and how to
beside
fight.
the fire,
He had the final
the fight
say.
was still going
You
on.
are refusing a
The
toast
women had
only
cut
to
the
be
meat,
forced to drink a
made the
forfeit.
soup,
Do you
and
think
filled
that
the
a house
wine,
can protect
and
you?
brought it over
Are
one
your
by
brains
one.
fried?
Jung
This
Hai
is
was
the
a
21st
distinguished guest
century,
here,
the world of
so he
firearms.
was specially given a
Deal
steak,
with them.
a whole leg
Since
of lamb,
the chief was
a
unwilling
big bowl
to
of
trade,
soup, and
the
a whole
people
pot
here
of
had
wine.
nothing to say.
This wine was
As
brewed
his
by
voice
them,
fell,
pure grain
he
wine.
also nodded to
Although
the
it was
mercenary
made from
leader
corn.
here.
The
After the
alcohol
mercenary
content was
leader
quite
got the
high.
news,
Jung
he
Hai
immediately
originally
waved his
didn't drink
hand.
white wine.
Then he saw a
Later
man
on,
50 meters
because
away
he had an
quickly
interest
stand
in
up.
soaked wine.
Then he took out
He
a
went to get
cylindrical
some soaked
object
wine
from a box
Even
he carried
now,
with
he was
him.
still at home.
At the same time,
Usually he would drink
an
some.
assistant was
So
preparing
he was
something.
quite satisfied
Damn
with
it,
this
they have a
wine.
rocket launcher.
He grabbed the leg
Give
of
me the
lamb,
August.
tore a piece
When
of
Jung
meat in
Hai
his
saw
mouth
this
and
thing,
swallowed it.
he immediately
Then he
knew what
drank
it
a
was
mouthful
and
of
immediately
soup
said
and a
to
mouthful
Patton.
of wine.
When Patton
This
heard
feeling
Jung
was
Hai's
really good.
words,
Just
although
like the
he liked
bandits
this
in the
gun
books,
very much,
eating
he didn't
meat in big
hesitate.
mouthfuls
After
and
all,
drinking
this
big
gun
bowls of
originally
wine.
belonged to Jung Hai.
And
After
Jung
Jung
Hai's
Hai
forthright
picked up
way
the
of
gun,
eating also
he
made the
immediately
nearby
aimed
named
at
at
the
the
rocket
rocket
launcher
launcher
in
in
the
the
distance.
distance.
They liked to
While
make
he was
friends who
aiming,
ate like this.
the rocket launcher
Even the
over
old
there was
chief
already
gave
loaded.
Jung Hai a thumbs
The
up
other
from
party
afar,
was also aiming,
expressing
and
his
preparing to
admiration
pull the
for
trigger.
Jung Hai's way of eating.
Bang! Unknowingly,
Fire.
the meat was almost finished.
In the blink
The
of
wine
an
was
eye,
also drunk,
with the mercenary
and the
leader's
competition
roar,
in front
he
of
pulled
Jung
the
Hai
trigger.
was almost
But
over.
at the same time,
The second
Jung
round,
Hai's
the third
gun
round,
also
the
fired.
fourth round, the bullet
When it
was
came
like
to
a
the
guided
seventh
missile.
round, directly hitting the head of the launched rocket. No matter what, had seen one of the rocket was at the warhead. It was the man full of scars who had led him here today. The other man was about the same size and weight as him. It was a trigger explosion. The 2 people were currently fighting on the field, for example, and it seemed like neither of them could win against the other. Stone house. As for the little girl beside Jiang Hai, and the she looked at the field with a nervous expression. These causing 2 people are about the same level. Now Jiang Hai was helping it determine the winner. It directly hit the little girl's nervous expression, and the conductive tube also entered with a smile. Yes, bang, Vero is with a loud sound. The flames rose in an instant, but my brother will definitely the main shooter. After the girl heard Jiang Hai's and the rocket launcher, she looked at the field seriously. Those who were close to the explosion also herself and her brother. Some of them were lucky, said in a low voice, but they only felt that their heads were full of stars. Jiang Hai couldn't help but smile. Some of them were unlucky. So this little girl and the big man were the aftershock of the explosion. Jiang Hai couldn't tell, including the mercenary leader. The situation on the field also changed. but the left side of his
who were
face was
originally
severely
fighting
burned.
were unknowingly
But at
getting
this
closer
time,
and closer
he
to
didn't
the
have
fire.
the time and leisure
This was
to care
something
about
that no
this,
one could control
because he was already in a
the
daze.
two people's strength
And after
was
this
about
incident,
the same.
the
Just
other
when the
mercenaries
elders
felt
were also in a
too
daze,
close to the fire.
Now that there
and
was no
about
commander,
to stop them.
they didn't know
The
what to
burning
do.
firewood in
At
the
this
fire
moment,
suddenly popped.
the sound of a
and a lot
propeller
of spinning
sparks quickly
flew out.
came from a distance.
Coincidentally,
and these
when
people's
these sparks
faces
flew
changed
out,
instantly.
the man named
They
Vero
didn't have
had
a
his back
helicopter,
facing the fire,
which proved that
while the
this
little
should be
girl's
the other
brother
party's
was facing the fire.
reinforcements.
The
Or it
Native
could be
Americans
said that
didn't
it was
care
the
if their
American
backs were
police.
burned, but the girl's brother was hit in the face by the sparks. He
Chapter
immediately retracted his
760.
power.
Hurry
and
up,
Vero
retreat.
took advantage of this
Hearing the
opportunity
sound of the
to
helicopter,
grab the girl's brother,
the second in
and
command
trip
of
him
this
with his
squad,
leg.
the
who was
girl's
the one
brother
who
fell
led the
back
vanguard
like a
to
mountain
attack the
toppling a
gate,
jade pillar.
instantly changed
In the
his
end, there was no
expression
miracle.
as he roared
The
loudly
little
at
girl's
once.
brother landed
Hearing
on the
his
ground
words,
first.
The
And
people who
Vero
were still
instantly
alive and
jumped up and
conscious
roared
immediately
loudly.
got up.
Although there was
Each
an
of them
accident
carried
in the
two,
end, or
These
one of the
Native
unconscious
Americans
people,
didn't care about
or the
this.
corpses of their
Seeing
own
Vero
people,
win, everyone
rushed
cheered.
into the forest.
Only the little girl
These
was a
corpses
little
also
helpless,
contained a lot
and
of
at the same
information,
time,
such as
there
the
was even a
identity
trace
of
of
these
fear
people,
in her eyes.
which mercenary
Patan
group they
you've
belonged
lost.
to,
Your
and so
sister
on.
is mine tonight.
Everyone knew the attitude
Looking
of
at the
the
little
American
girl's
government
brother on the
towards
ground,
the Native
who still
Americans.
couldn't believe the
If
result.
they did this without
Vero
any
laughed
news,
loudly and
they
said
would
to
not
him,
know that this
in
small
this village
village had been
on the
massacred
day the first warrior
until
was
it was
born.
discovered by
He could appoint a
outsiders.
girl to be his
After
wife.
a long time,
People
this
might
was
not
the
be able to
biggest
connect
benefit
them.
that the little
However,
girl mentioned
now that
just
they were
now.
caught red-handed,
In fact,
they had
Vero
to run
had
even
taken
if
a
they did
fancy
not
to
want
the little
to.
girl a long
Why
time
are you
ago.
running? But
Come
the little
back.
girl
I
said
haven't
that she
gotten
wanted
what
to
I
wait
want yet.
until the United
Seeing
States
that these
recognized
people
her
were
as
about
an
to
adult.
run.
This
The people
year,
in
she was
mountaineering
18
gear
months
became
old,
anxious,
and her birthday
the leader
was
of the
last
group,
month.
who was
This
leading the
time,
dog, shouted
if he
loudly.
appointed her as his wife,
Unfortunately,
the little girl
these
would be in
mercenaries
trouble.
were obviously
Let's go.
veterans on the battlefield.
However, it was
Following
obvious
orders
that
and
this person
prohibitions
came
was
with
the
this
most
purpose.
basic thing.
The Native
They only
Americans
listened to
followed
their
the law of the
superior.
jungle.
When the
Although
mercenary
Vero
leader
wanted
was
to
still
marry his
alive,
little
they
sister,
listened to him,
which made
now
Patton
that the
very
mercenary
unwilling.
leader was
He
confused.
really couldn't do anything
They
about
naturally
it.
had to listen
This was
to
the
the
price
second
of
in
losing.
command.
At
As
this
for the
time,
employer,
Vero walked
haha,
into the
who was
crowd
it?
and
Did
saw
it
the
have
little girl
anything to do
sitting
with
next
them?
to Jiang Hai.
You bastards,
He
don't you
smiled
want the money?
foolishly.
Seeing
In
that
fact,
these
he
people
wasn't a bad
completely
person.
ignored him,
He liked
and
this
kept
little girl
retreating.
wholeheartedly.
This person
To
was
become
also
the first
angry
warrior,
and shouted loudly.
marrying her
Hearing
openly
this
was also
person's
his
words,
vow.
The
From another
retreating second in
perspective,
command could
this
not
was
help
a story
but
of
stop.
childhood
Although I don't know
sweethearts.
how much
But
money
from
you
the little girl's
negotiated with our
perspective,
boss,
it wasn't
this
a good
failure
story.
is mainly because
I'm not
your
going to go with
information
you.
was wrong.
The little girl
Moreover,
said to Vero
we
and
have lost
flashed
so many
behind Jiang
brothers.
Hai.
If you
Using
dare not
Jiang
give us
Hai's
the
body
money,
as a shield.
even a cent less,
Originally,
you can
Jiang
forget
Hai
about
didn't want to
living
get
in
involved
peace
in
for the
this
rest
tribe.
of your life.
But now,
After
it
glaring
seemed that
fiercely
he had
at
no
this
choice
person,
but to be
the
involved.
second in command
Outsiders
immediately
step
ran
aside.
out.
These
Vero's
bastards
English was very
bastards.
poor,
Seeing
and
that
he
the
only
second
knew a
in
few
command
words.
left.
But when
This
he saw
person could
Patton's
not
little
help but
sister's
curse
actions,
secretly.
he knew
Then,
that she wanted
he
this
turned his
fair-skinned
head
outsider
and glared
to protect
fiercely
her.
at those who were
It would be
still in the
strange
stone
if Vero
house.
was nice to
Then
Jiang
he
Hai.
wanted to leave as well.
Ahem. Although I
can't
don't
let that
really
dog
understand
leave.
the rules of your
Seeing
tribe,
that they were about
is
to
there any
leave,
way to
the
prevent this
patriarch
little girl
also
from
shouted
going with
loudly.
you? Jiang
Hearing
Hai
his
looked
words,
at the little girl
Jiang Hai
behind
didn't
him.
care so much.
After all,
He
he
stood
knew
up
her,
directly,
so it wasn't
and aimed
appropriate
with the
for him
August.
to say that he
With a
didn't want to
bang,
help.
The dog that
So
was
he
led
just
by the
stretched
man
out
was
his
shot
hand
through the
and
head
asked with
and
a
died
smile,
on the spot.
if you want to
Seeing
help
this
this
dog
little
die,
girl,
the man
you'll
was
have
also
to compete.
furious.
But you
He
haven't
could only throw
experienced
away
the
the rope that
competition,
tied the dog,
so it's not
and then
fair for
quickly
Vero.
ran into the forest.
Hearing Jiang Hai's
Looking
words,
at their retreating
the big
appearance,
guy in front of
Jiang
him
Hai
didn't
also
understand,
rolled out of the stone
but the
house.
patriarch heard it. He gently tapped his wooden
However,
staff and
as
said
soon
to
as he
Jiang
flashed
Hai,
out,
hearing
he was
his
greeted
words,
by a few
Jiang Hai
bullets.
stood up with a
An
smile.
army is not professional,
That's easy, not
I'll
elite.
fight 7 rounds.
From the way they retreated, it can be seen that this mercenary
Chapter
regiment
756.
is obviously an
A
extremely
young man,
elite
are you sure?
existence.
Hearing
Although they
Jiang
retreated
Hai's words,
quickly,
they didn't
the
panic
patriarch
at
couldn't
all. help but look
The
at
most
Zhang Hai
important
with
thing
some surprise
is that these people
of course
deliberately
left some
hearing
people
the
behind to
patriarch's
cover the
words.
rear.
Zhang Hai
Looking at the
also stood
firepower
up
that
and walked
covered
to
the
the
rear,
center of the field.
Zhang Hai couldn't
He was
help
also
but
a little
curse.
drunk now,
Although the
otherwise
AUG's
he wouldn't
range
do
is
this.
long enough,
But
it
since
has no
he already
effect on
said
them.
it, he
There
can
was
only
no
use
reason
the
for
desert
him
eagle
to
to
admit
attack.
defeat.
But the
All right,
problem
this
is
foreign
that it's
guest
difficult
wants to
for the
challenge our
desert eagle to
tradition.
catch up with
Now,
them.
if there's anyone
the
who
desert
wants
eagle's
to fight
attack
with him,
range
come
is
out.
so short.
I'll give you
However,
one more chance.
was he supposed to just
Seeing
watch
Zhang
these
Hai
people
walk
leave
into the
like that?
center of the
This
field,
is absolutely
the patriarch
impossible.
thought for a moment
After
and
thinking
said
for a
loudly,
while,
hearing
Zhang
the
Hai threw the
patriarch's
august
words
to the ground again.
Many people who lost
Then he
just now
exerted
had
force
some
with his
thoughts.
legs and
After
jumped
the
out of his
patriarch
hiding
shouted
place
twice
in an instant.
A big man
At
who
this
just
time,
entered the top
the flames
stood
also
up first.
suppressed him again.
The reason why
But
he
Zhang
lost
Hai
just
used
now
all
was
his
mainly
abilities at this
because
time.
he was a little
8
careless.
times the limit
He
of an
stepped on a
ordinary
stone
person
and got his
speed
foot hurt,
and agility.
As a result,
allowed
he
him
was
to
knocked
reach a
down
low
by his
wall in one
opponent.
step.
Naturally,
Then, with
he
a
wasn't
flip,
convinced.
he went directly
now
to
that
the
he
roof
had
of
a chance
house.
to start over,
Seeing Zhang
he
Hai's
naturally wouldn't
movie-like
give up.
movements,
Okay,
The
Bar is
hidden
the first to
enemies
come out
also
and
panicked a
accept the
little.
challenge.
Retreat.
Seeing
The
that
roof
someone
was a
came
blind
out,
spot.
the
So they
patriarch
couldn't find
also
him.
withdrew from
But
the
at this
battle
time,
circle.
the
As
sound
for
of the
the girl,
helicopter was
she
getting
looked at
closer
Jiang
and
Hai with
closer.
some worry.
After thinking
Because she
for a
didn't
while,
know how good
the
Jiang
person
Hai
in
was.
charge of the retreat
If Jiang
was
Hai
ready
got
to
injured
retreat
because
first,
of her,
then
then
she would feel guilty.
The people who left
However,
first
Jiang
had
Hai
already
didn't care
reached
about
the village
this.
entrance.
Seeing someone
They could
come
also
out,
enter the
Jiang
forest
Hai
before the
smiled and waved
helicopter
his hand.
arrived.
The
In the
opposite
midsummer
person
of the
and Jiang
Alabakia
Hai
Mountains,
didn't speak the same
the
language,
vegetation in the
and
mountain
he didn't want to
forest was
exchange
extremely
greetings
rich.
with Jiang Hai.
As long as
When
they
he saw
entered the
Jiang Hai
forest,
waving his
the police
hand,
wouldn't be
he
able to
immediately
catch
rushed
them.
up. And most
This was also
importantly,
his skill.
the Alabakia
First, he
Mountains
wrestled,
were quite long,
but Jiang Hai
it was
didn't
not only
intend
in
to
the
wrestle
United
with him,
States,
he
but
wanted
also
to
in
end the
Canada
battle quickly.
As long as
Looking
they
at the
passed the
person
first
who rushed
wave of
over,
pursuit,
Jiang
the
Hai took
following
a step
things
back
would not be a
and
problem
then
for
rushed
them.
forward in an
With
instant.
this person's order,
The moment his
the
right
four
hand
people who
touched
were
the other
originally
person's
hiding
right
jumped
hand,
up immediately.
Jiang Hai's
and
strange
moved
strength
quickly
also
toward the
emerged.
village entrance.
Without saying
But
anything,
at this time,
he directly
Jiang
pulled
Hai
the other
suddenly
person
rushed
over.
out of the house
In
next
the
to
other
them.
person's
Just
surprised
now,
eyes,
Jiang Hai
Jiang
used his
Hai's
strong
foot
physical
instantly
fitness
exerted force
to jump down
and
from
threw
the
the
back
other
of the
person
house
over his
after
shoulder.
getting on the roof.
Fortunately,
He went around
still
half
knew
a
how
circle
strong he was
and went to the back
so he
of the
still
house.
put the other person
After
down
breaking
gently.
the wooden planks
The other
of the
person
house,
didn't
he
understand
rushed
what
into
was
the
going
house
on
and killed
and
the
was
enemy
already
here.
lying on the
The
ground.
enemy's reaction
His
was
eyes
not
were looking
slow,
at Jiang Hai,
but they didn't expect
at this time,
that Jiang
he
Hai's
still
speed
didn't
was
understand
even
how
faster.
he fell down.
At the moment of
Looking at
rushing
the
out,
person who smiled,
Jiang Hai did not
Jiang
say
Hai stood up
anything
again
and directly
said to
fired
the
two
people
shots
on the field.
The two people
Next,
closest to him,
at this time,
one was shot
Varen
in the head,
also looked at Jiang
and the other
Hai
one
and
was
narrowed
shot
his
in the
eyes.
knee and fell to
He
the
really
ground.
underestimated
Just as
Jiang
he was
Hai.
about to continue
As for
shooting,
the patriarch on the other side, he smiled. He didn't expect
the two
Jiang
people
Hai
on the
to
other
have such
side
strength.
had already
It
reacted
was really
and shot
surprising.
at him with their guns.
After Jiang Hai
But at
showed
this
his small
time,
hand,
Jiang Hai was
the
in
other
an open
people
place.
were also a little
He
surprised.
had no choice but to dodge. After
But
a
this
glance,
time,
he
Jiang
finally
Hai
decided
used a bit
to
of
use the
skill
body of the
and
nearest
didn't show his
mercenary as a
absolute
shield.
strength.
In a
which really
flash,
made the people
Jiang
of this
Hai
tribe
squatted
think.
down and
After
picked up the
Jiang
man's
Hai dealt
body.
with the person,
In an instant,
less than 10
the man's
seconds
eyes
later,
were almost full
another
of holes,
person stood up,
and Jiang
this
Hai was
person
waiting
was
for
also
an
in the top
opportunity
8.
to counterattack.
He lost to Varen.
It's too late.
And
Let's
besides
go.
Varen,
But at
he
this
didn't
time,
think that he was
the
worse than
mercenary
anyone
who was
else.
shot in the leg
Looking
pushed
at
away
Jiang
his
Hai,
companions
he
and
strode
shouted
over,
at
took a
them.
posture,
At the same
and then
time,
waved at
he
Jiang
took a
Hai.
grenade from his
These
clothes.
people were all people
Seeing
who
the
fought in the
actions of
jungle,
their companions,
so none of them
the
had
other
bad
two
eyesight.
people gritted their
Just
teeth.
now,
While
Jiang
shooting
Hai
at
dealt
Jiang
with that
Hai,
person,
they quickly
not only
ran
because
towards
he
he
took
took advantage
advantage
of that person's
feeling that they were
carelessness
getting
and skills,
farther and farther
but
away.
also because he
Jiang
took
Hai was
advantage of
also
the person's
secretly
forward
angry.
momentum.
When he was about
This
to
time,
reach the limit of
this
50
person
meters,
wasn't going to give
Jiang
Hai
Hai
a
did not
chance
care
to
so
rush
much.
forward.
He directly
Jiang Hai
threw
looked
the
at
man
the
who was
person in
about
front
to
of
be
him
shot into
standing
pieces
still,
in his hand,
waiting for
and got
him
up
to
to
attack
fight
back.
He also
However,
smiled.
he
At that
didn't care
moment,
about this.
he suddenly saw
Jiang
a
Hai
figure
took a
pouncing
step toward
toward
him with a
and
grenade
in the
in
next
his hand.
second,
He
he
rushed
rushed
towards
towards
the
the
person in front of him.
Fortunately, this
The
guy
person
still had
also
some
opened his
self-awareness.
It
Ready
was
to deal with
impossible for
Jiang
people
Hai
like
directly
him to
like
go to
how
heaven,
Jiang Hai dealt
but
with the
Jiang
person
Hai
in
was not
front of him.
prepared to go to
But
hell
was
with
Jiang
him.
Hai that easy
Looking
to
at the
deal
man
with?
who rushed
His
over,
body shrank.
Jiang Hai did
He
not
dodged
say
the
a word
opponent's
and
grab,
directly shot him,
and then his right
making a
arm
huge
wrapped
bloody
around.
hole in his chest.
Anyone who had watched
His heart
WWE
instantly
would know that there
exploded,
was a move
and his
called the golden
consciousness
arm
was
hook.
blurred.
It
The
used the
safety
force
of
of
the
one's
grenade in his
forward
hand
charge
had already been
and
released,
the strength of one's
and
arm
it fell
to directly
powerlessly.
attack the opponent's
Jiang Hai's
chin and
eyes
neck.
were much faster.
A direct impact
he knew
would
that if
cause
the
the
opponent
opponent
fell
to
to the
lose
ground,
consciousness.
then he would be
However,
finished.
Jiang
This
Hai's
grenade
attack
was
wasn't
a
aimed at
tactical
the neck or
grenade.
chin.
In
But
addition to the
directly at the person's
explosives,
stomach.
there were also
Then,
a lot of small
as if
steel
he was
balls.
hit by a
If
majestic
this grenade
stag,
exploded,
the person's
then
feet
Jiang
were
Hai would
instantly
probably
lifted
be
off the
turned
ground.
into a meat paste.
And after flying
Seeing
for a
the grenade
distance,
in front
he fell
of him,
to the ground.
Jiang Hai
At
did
this
not
time,
say a word.
he was still
He
holding
went up
his
and kicked
painful
the grenade
stomach,
in an instant.
looking at Jiang
At
Hai
the
in
same
disbelief.
time, he grabbed
Next,
the dead guy and used
looking
him
at
as
the
a
man
shield.
lying on the ground.
Bang!
With a
Jiang Hai
loud
also
explosion,
raised his hands
the grenade
and shouted
exploded
to
in
the
midair.
people over there.
Countless small
That's
steel
really
balls
amazing.
quickly shot in all
Seeing
directions.
Jiang Hai take care of the
Fortunately,
two big men so
there
easily.
was some distance
The
from the stone
patriarch's
house,
eyes were even
so
more
the
surprised.
tribesmen did not suffer
At this
any
time,
injuries.
the third person
As for
also
Jiang
stood
Hai,
up, because
but
of the meat shield
unfortunately,
on his back.
although this
He
person
played a key
learned the
role.
lesson of the first
After
two
the
people,
explosion ended,
this time he played
Jiang Hai
guerrilla
also
warfare
drilled
with
out
Jiang
from
Hai,
under the man's body,
dodging Jiang Hai
looking
everywhere.
at the man's back.
But even in terms
At
of
least
agility,
a dozen steel balls
he was
were
far
shot into his
inferior to
body.
Jiang Hai.
If it was not
After
for this
dodging
guy,
for more than 10
then these
seconds,
steel balls would have hit
Jiang
his
Hai
body,
grabbed his arm,
taking advantage
and then
of this
lightly
time.
tripped him.
The two
Causing
people on
him
the
to
other
fall to the
side
ground.
had already run
After
to the
taking
village
care of
entrance.
the third person,
The majority
the
of the
fourth person
troops
also
had already
came out.
entered the mountain.
But unfortunately,
at this time,
he was also no
two
match for
helicopters
Jiang
flew
Hai.
over from a low
Seeing
altitude.
Jiang Hai easily take care of his own people like an
The
adult
revolving
beating a
machine
child.
guns were also
Vero's
madly
expression
shooting
was
at the
very
people
serious.
who were running away.
It must be known
But
that
these
the
two
strength
people
of these
were not
people was
ordinary
actually
cannons.
not that far away
Ordinary
from him.
people would almost certainly die when facing
He could take
low
care of
altitude
these people if he
helicopters.
wanted.
But these
But it
two
was
people
impossible
used their
for
own
him to do
footwork.
it. as
step
easily
by
as
step,
Jiang Hai.
like claws and
In
teeth.
other words,
To avoid
Jiang
the
Hai
low-altitude
took care of
bullets
these
of the
people without
helicopters.
using any strength
Finally,
at all.
with a fish jump,
this meant that
they
Jiang
flashed
Hai
into
was
the
much
forest.
stronger than him.
Bastards.
At least
Looking
in
at
terms
these
of physical
people
fitness,
escaping,
it
Jiang
would be
Hai
very
also
difficult
sighed
for him to
helplessly.
win against
Once these
Jiang
people
Hai in a
entered the
head-on
mountain,
confrontation.
this matter was
So
over.
he had to think of
If
other
these
ways.
people were content
Looking
to be
at
rats
Patton's
for the rest
sister,
of
who
their
was happy
lives,
because of
at
Jiang
least
Hai's
the
victory,
American police
Vero
would have a
couldn't
hard
help but
time
grit his
catching them.
teeth.
Could it be
Fortunately,
that she really doesn't
Jiang Hai
like
got
me?
2
How
corpses at the
hateful.
last moment.
Hey, big guy, it's
Otherwise,
your turn.
he might not even
Just
know
as
who they
Varen
were.
was thinking of a
While
solution,
Jiang Hai was thinking,
Jiang Hai had already
the 2
knocked down
helicopters
the
on the
7th
other
person.
side also
He
stopped
didn't even
outside
stop
the
to
tribe.
rest as he
Then a
directly
group
said
of
to
people
Varen,
quickly ran out.
"Let's go."
Looking
After
at these
hearing
people in
Jiang
police
Hai's
uniforms,
words,
although
Jiang
Vero
Hai
didn't
also
have a
threw the
perfect
gun in
plan
his
to
hand
take care
far
of
away,
Jiang Hai,
and then
he still
consciously
braced
squatted
himself
down
and walked
He
up.
knew that in the United
Let me
States,
tell you,
it
it
was
was not the
definitely
time to
win.
talk about
Standing
self-esteem,
about 5 meters
especially
in front
when
of Jiang
facing
Hai.
the police.
Vero roared
In the
loudly.
United States,
But
if the
unfortunately,
police rushed to you,
Jiang Hai didn't
and
know
you
what
did
he was
not put your
talking
hands
about.
on your head
He
and
just
squat on
waved
the
at him
ground
and smiled
the police
casually.
would shoot you.
Ha!
This was
Seeing
actually
that
not a
Jiang
very
Hai didn't
difficult
put him
thing
in
to
his
understand in
Vero
the United
roared,
States,
stomped his
especially
feet,
when it
and
happened to
instantly
people of
attacked
color.
Jiang Hai.
A while
But
ago,
this time,
there was
although
a very
he attacked,
popular
he didn't
incident.
rush too far.
It was said
He
that a
was guarding
young man
against Jiang
took his
Hai,
wife and daughter
afraid
out to
that
play.
Jiang Hai would
On
throw
the
him
road,
over his
they were
shoulder
stopped
and
by the
finish him
police.
off.
Then
Looking
the
at
police
him,
asked
Jiang
him to
Hai
put his
smiled
hands on the
gently.
steering wheel.
He didn't care about
but
this
he was
person's
wearing a
movements.
seatbelt,
And
just like
could
an
not
ant.
lie down.
No matter how
he was ready
arrogant
to
it was,
unbuckle
it
the
was still an
seatbelt
ant.
first, and then lie
no matter
down.
what kind of
As a
technique
result,
it used, the
it
police
wouldn't be
opened
able to
fire
withstand a
and
single
directly
kick
killed
from
him in
someone.
front of his wife
This was
and
the
children.
situation between
This
Vero
incident
and
caused
Jiang
a big
Hai.
sensation
No
in
matter
the
how
United
arrogant
States,
Vero was,
and many
or how
black
many
people
techniques he
protested in
used,
the streets.
it was all useless
But in the end,
Jiang Hai's
the
eyes.
police who shot and
Jiang
killed
Hai
the man
just
was still
smiled
unscathed.
and took advantage
They
of the
said that
moment
he was
when Vero
overdoing
tried
the
to
law
attack.
enforcement. Before
And
Vero
then he
could
was
pull
stripped
his
of his
hand
qualifications
back,
as a
Jiang Hai
police
directly
officer.
grabbed his wrist.
He did not even
and
go
held
to
him
jail.
up by the waist
Therefore,
while using
in
his
the
other
United
hand
States,
to lift him
when
up above
facing
his
the
head.
police rushing over,
Wah!
the
Seeing
best
that
choice
Jiang
was
Hai
to put
could
your hands
easily
on your
lift
head
Vero
and squat
who
on
was
the
at
ground.
least 100
Sometimes
kilograms.
the police
They
were
were
more
a little
terrifying
stunned.
than the gangsters.
In fact, Vero was
Although
even
it would
more
make
stunned.
you suffer and hurt
Jiang
your
Hai didn't give
self-esteem.
him a chance to
For example,
counterattack.
when the
The
police
battle
rushed
was
over
over
as soon as he
two
was
of
thrown
them came
forward,
up and pressed
Vero
Jiang Hai
wasn't
to
the
the
kind of
ground.
person who
They
could
kicked
adjust
away
his
the gun
center
and
of
then
gravity
handcuffed Jiang
in
Hai.
the air and land
Jiang Hai did
steadily.
not say a word
Such
about
people
this.
only appeared in
After
movies.
seeing that Jiang Hai
After
was
being
under
thrown
control,
by Jiang Hai,
the police
he fell
rushed
to the
into
ground
the
with a
stone
bang.
house.
He
When
was
they
still
saw
in
the
a
Native
daze.
Americans,
Did he lose
the
just
police
like
wanted
that?
to do the same.
Yeah, we won.
Unfortunately,
Seeing
the
Vero
Native
fall to the
Americans were
ground,
not Jiang Hai.
the first person
Their
to react was
civilization
Patton's
was not
sister,
connected to the
the girl
outside
who still
world.
had some baby fat in Jiang Hai's eyes. She couldn't
Without
help but
saying
jump up
anything,
and shout excitedly.
Patton directly picked
hearing
up
her
the gun
words,
that
Jiang
Jiang
Hai
Hai
chuckled.
put down.
As for
and aimed
Vero,
at the police
he smashed
in front
the
of
ground
him.
hard.
When the police
suffered
saw
a great
that this
loss
person
this time.
dared to resist, they
I
subconsciously
hereby
wanted
announce
to
that our
shoot.
number one warrior
Fortunately,
this year
today
is
was
this
a day of
mysterious
worship,
outsider.
so they
Jiang
were still
Hai.
wearing their
Seeing
traditional
that the
clothes.
clansmen in the
When they
distance
saw
were
that
still
this
in a
person
daze,
was a Native American,
the patriarch walked
the police
over
did
and
not
grabbed
dare to
Jiang
move.
Hai's hand.
In a Native
Hearing the
American
patriarch's
tribe,
words,
if the
most
police
of the
killed a
clansmen
Native
cheered.
American,
The number
the
one
tribe
warrior
would definitely
deserved
riot.
to be cheered like
When that
this.
happened, it didn't
All the
matter if he was a
responsibility would
Klansman
be
or
on the
not.
police.
Most importantly,
Yes, there were people
Jiang
that
Hai
the
proved
American
this with
police
his own
did not
bravery.
dare to provoke.
You're awesome, you
Therefore,
won. At
although
this
the
time,
police raised
the
their
little
guns,
girl ran
they
over
did
and
not
patted
dare to
Jiang
shoot.
Hai's arm with
Both
a smile.
sides were in a
At
standoff.
first, she
At
was
this
really
moment,
worried about Jiang
a person
Hai,
in charge
but
walked
she didn't
over
expect
and
Jiang Hai
gestured
to
for
be
the
so
police
strong.
to put down their
It was
guns.
really amazing.
Then,
What
he
are
looked
you
at
so
the people
excited
in front
about?
of him.
Don't you have
looking
to
at the Native
accompany him
Americans
tonight?
in front of him.
But at this
This
time,
person said
Patton
calmly,
walked over.
I don't
and
know
looked
if
at
any
his
of you can
excited
speak
sister.
English. He couldn't
I know
help
how
but
to,
sigh
sir.
and said to
Hearing
the girl,
someone come over to
hearing
talk,
Patton's words,
the chief chief of the tribe also walked out. She forgot about this matter. While looking at this person. What's wrong? Seeing that they were talking, girl suddenly stunned, the tension between the two sides also felt a little strange. The police officer managed to get a preliminary understanding of what had happened from the family leader. In the eyes of the girl, at this moment, it seems that Jiang Hai was also brought over. Well, seeing Jiang Hai walking over, let's go. The person in charge could not help but frown. The patriarch also announced because he felt that Jiang Hai looked familiar. As the patriarch's voice fell, he could not tell where they had met before. These people left in twos and threes. This gentleman is our tribe's benefactor. Around him. He was the one who called the police. Didn't know where to stay tonight. He was also the one who helped us to repel the enemy's attack. Do I have a place to stay? Seeing Jiang Hai walking over. If not, the tribal chief back to the car and sleep for the night. Just looking like at the girl, Jiang Hai was now their most distinguished guest. Hearing the tribal chief's words, the girl couldn't help but curl her lips. Did not release Jiang Hai's handcuffs. Took Jiang Hai looking at Jiang Hai house. The person in charge the door open. Jiang Hai also followed her in. We can't let you go. As soon as he walked in, Can
He
you
smelled a
explain the
faint
reason why
fragrance.
you are here
This
and your
smell,
identity?
he often smelled
Hearing
in
this
Delina
person's
and
words,
Marion's room.
Zhang Hai said
This
casually,
seems to be a girl's room.
"Oh, I'm here to play.
At this time,
I've been
the
playing
girl
in
who
this
led him
forest
and
for a
also
while.
lit the oil lamp
As for
in the
my
room,
identity, my
illuminating
name is
the
Zhang
room.
Hai."
I
Zhang
live
Hai
in
also
Winthrop.
looked around,
Winthrop
and
found
Zhang
that
Hai,
this was really a
hearing
girl's
Zhang
room.
Hai's words,
Everything
the person
was neat
suddenly
and tidy,
frowned,
and
this
there were
name was
pink
somewhat
sheets on the
familiar.
bed. It wasn't like the other Native Americans who had some decorations like deer heads hanging on the
Chapter
walls.
761.
In short,
the
boss,
room
it's
was
all
very
done.
warm and feminine.
Looking at Zhang Hai
"This is
coming
my
out
room.
of the police
You
station,
can stay
Moses.
here tonight."
Adams
Seeing
was the
Zhang
first
Hai
to greet
looking
him
at her room,
and said to
the girl
Zhang
said
Hai
shyly,
with a smile.
"Oh,
Zhang Hai
if I
also
live
smiled.
here,
Where will you
but then
live?
he saw his war
Hearing
shield.
her, Zhang
He
Hai
couldn't
couldn't
help
help
but
but
ask
smile
with some
bitterly.
doubts.
This war
Heaven
shield
and
is
earth
really
can
good.
testify that
At
he has
least it
really not
protected him
flirting.
twice. He just
Not
asked
to
with
mention the
concern.
deer.
If
But
it
the
weren't
girl
for this
suddenly
car,
blushed. Zhang Hai might have been
I
in
of course I
danger.
live with you.
Therefore,
You are the number
although
one
Zhang
warrior.
Hai looked at the car
Have you
in a
forgotten our
miserable
custom
state,
here?
he was
The
really
number one
grateful
warrior
for it.
can choose a woman.
This car is directly
The more
left
the
in
girl
Boston.
spoke,
The
after
lower her
these
head
people are
and
done
the lower her
collecting
voice
evidence.
was. But
You can
Zhang
help
Hai
me repair
probably
this car.
understood what she was
Looking
trying
at
to
Moses
say.
Adams, Zhang Hai said helplessly,
"Hee, you think
Of
too
course,
much.
this is no
I
problem.
just saw that you didn't
Hearing
seem to be
Zhang
very
Hai's words,
satisfied
Moses,
with that person.
Adams immediately
So I made
said
a
with a
move.
smile,
I didn't
Of
mean
course,
to take advantage
the bill
of you.
for the repair of
How
the car
about
will
this?
be sent to
I'll go
Zhang
to my
Hai.
car and sleep
One
for
must
the night.
know that this car is not
Hearing
cheap,
the girl's words,
and the price of
Zhang
repairing
Hai
it is
smiled
not cheap
and
either.
explained to the girl,
This night,
"Now there are quite a
didn't
lot of
sleep
women
well.
around him.
Now I want to
He
go
is
home
already
and
a
have
little
a good
powerless."
sleep. Seeing
Moreover,
Moses, Adams
this girl is
agreed.
a member of
Zhang
the
Hai
Native
also
American
stretched,
tribe.
and then
If she
said
splits,
with a little
then
helplessness,
Zhang Hai will be in
this
trouble.
day was full of things.
No, you can't go.
After the
If
battle
you
last
leave,
night,
I will
the
be
police
laughed at
came.
by them.
They were divided
But when
into
Zhang
two
Hai
groups.
finished speaking,
One group
and
was
went to
about
chase
to
those
leave.
people,
The girl
but Zhang
suddenly
Hai
grabbed his
estimated
hand
that it
and
was
said to
useless.
him. Hearing
After
the
all,
girl's words,
the Alabama
Zhang
mountains
Hai
were
couldn't
too big,
help but be a
These
little
people went
dumbfounded.
deep into the
Then
mountains
this
and
is really
forests.
troublesome.
It would be
We can
strange
say
if
that we
the
are
police
almost
could
not
find them.
familiar with each
Next,
other.
another group
It is
of
really
people
not
flew a
good for me to
helicopter
live here.
and brought Zhang Hai.
Listening to
and
the
his
girl's
car over.
words,
Zhang Hai
course,
touched his
there were
head
also
and
some
said
people from the
helplessly.
tribe who came
Hearing
back
Zhang
with them.
Hai's words,
These people
the
were
girl's
all
face was
witnesses,
very red, but
so
she
they
didn't
also had
speak.
to record their
How
statements.
about this? I will live
At
here,
the same
but I will
time,
sleep on the floor.
The video in
You can
Zhang
sleep
Hai's
on the
mobile
bed.
phone was also copied.
Looking at the girl who
the
didn't
video
speak,
he took was
and
extremely
her face
important.
was still very red.
They would have to rely
Zhang
on
Hai
the
couldn't
video
help but smile
and the
helplessly.
corpses of the two
He is really
mercenaries
unlucky
to figure
he
out who
encounters
these
all kinds
people
of
were.
things.
But
This
after
okay.
knowing who Zhang Hai
Seeing
is,
that Zhang Hai
the
really
police
didn't
here were
want to
more
touch her,
respectful to him.
the girl also
Zhang
nodded,
Hai didn't say anything,
but she didn't know why.
although he was pressed
In
to the
addition
ground
to
at
the
the
feeling
beginning.
of relief,
This
there
was also
the
a little
privilege of the
disappointment.
American police.
A woman's mind
He
is
could
really
sue
not
people if
easy
he
to
wanted
guess.
to.
But after all, this was his own home. So there
Chapter
was no need to make
757.
things too stiff.
After determining
Zhang Hai
where
didn't
to
say
stay,
anything.
Zhang Hai
Although he was
also went
pressed
to
to
the
the ground
bathroom
at
in the
first.
room.
This was
tribe
also the
indeed had
privilege
no
of the
electricity.
American police.
Otherwise,
He could sue
how
people,
could the electric
but after
wire
all,
be pulled
this
deep
was
into
his
the
own
mountains?
So
Most
Zhang
of the
Hai
Native
forgave
American
these people,
tribes had no
and
electricity.
these policemen were also
Without
very
electricity,
grateful to Zhang Hai.
many things were
in their
inconvenient.
eyes.
If
For
a rich
example,
man like
there was
Zhang
no
Hai
water
didn't
heater
sue
for
them,
bathing.
it would be the greatest
Fortunately,
help to them.
Zhang Hai didn't
In this
care
way,
about
the
this.
police station was
After
busy all
simply
night.
wiping himself
This
with
morning,
cold water,
Moses,
he returned
Adams
to the
finished
room.
all the procedures
The girl had already
and
made
picked
the
up Zhang
mattress
Hai.
on the floor.
Just as Zhang
After
Hai and
Zhang
Moses
Hai thanked her,
Adams were
he lay
chatting.
on the floor.
Atraz
and the
SUV
girl went
appeared
to
in
wash
front
up.
of Zhang Hai.
While the girl was washing
Azelina's
up,
beautiful face
Zhang Hai also
appeared.
casually looked at the phone. But he just looked
Looking
at
at
it.
Azelina's
There was no
appearance,
internet here.
Zhang Hai
There was
smiled
a
and
mobile
waved
phone
to Moses
signal,
Adams,
but there was no
indicating
internet
that he will
signal,
leave this matter
so
to
he
him.
couldn't get on the
Zhang
internet.
Hai immediately
Moreover,
ran into the car.
Zhang
and
Hai's
sat
phone
in the
was running out
passenger
of
seat.
battery.
After
His
seeing
battery was
Zhang
only
Hai sit
charged
down,
in the car for a short
Azelina
time,
also started
and
the
now
engine,
there was more than 40%
and the car drove
left.
away from the police
Everyone
station.
knew that the
It was
electricity
very
bill
dangerous
for a
this
smartphone
time.
was not a
When the
small
car
amount.
drove on the road,
If he went out to play
Azelina
during normal
couldn't help but
times,
say to
the
Zhang
battery
Hai,
would run out
in
every
fact,
day.
Zhang
No
Hai
matter
could
what
hear
kind
that
of
there
phone
was
it
some
was,
resentment in
it
her
would run out
words.
of battery
It was understandable. If it was a game or something, they were Jiang Hai's bodyguards after a few hours. When such a thing happened, with more than 40%, they were not by Jiang Hai's side. Jiang Hai could still use it for a night. This was their dereliction of duty. If he played the phone for a while, they felt sorry in their hearts. Run out of battery. So when only she and Jiang Hai were left, she complained. Jiang Hai turned off all the back-end functions. This time, it's just a coincidence. But if he didn't play the phone, to be honest, glancing at Azalina apologetically, Jiang Hai was a very normal young man. He used to sleep early at night, but now Azalina couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. Although it was already quite late outside, don't cause trouble. It was only 9 o'clock. Your safety is the most important. He couldn't play with the phone yet. looking
It
at
was really a
Jiang
bit
Hai,
troublesome to
Azalina
sleep,
said with a
but
serious
fortunately
face.
at this time,
But hearing her words,
the girl also
Jiang
came
Hai
out of
could
the
only
bathroom,
smile bitterly.
then walked
Am
gently
I the one
to the
who
bed
caused
and
trouble
climbed
this
up.
time? You haven't
It's just
slept
a coincidence,
yet.
okay?
Looking at Jiang
By
Hai
the way,
still
who are
lying
those
there.
people, do you
Although
know?
he didn't speak,
I asked the police.
she felt that
The
Jiang
police
Hai
just
wasn't
smiled
asleep.
and didn't tell me.
To be honest,
What the hell
if
is this?
Jiang Hai didn't sleep,
Looking at Azalina,
she didn't dare to
Jiang
sleep
Hai
either.
asked with some
Even
doubts.
though to a certain extent,
Of course they won't
she
tell you.
belonged to him
Those
tonight.
people are not to be
It's too
trifled
early.
with.
They
They
don't
don't
tell
sleep.
you because they want
Hearing
to protect
her words,
you.
Jiang
But
Hai
since
nodded
we are
and
here,
whispered,
it
"That's
doesn't
how it
matter
is
if
in the
they tell you.
mountains.
There's
Judging
nothing
from the
we can
video
do
you
about
took
it."
and the photos of the
Seeing
two
that
bodies,
Jiang Hai couldn't
those
sleep,
mercenaries
the girl
should be
smiled and
Spartacus
said,
people.
Speaking of
Hearing
which,
Jiang Hai
we haven't
changed the
gotten to know
topic.
each other yet.
Azalina didn't
After
hold
all,
on to it
it's
and
fate
said
to
to
sleep
Jiang
in the
Hai.
same room.
Before
My
Jiang
name is
Hai's
Jiang
mobile
Hai.
phone was taken
I'm from
away,
Huaxia.
he
I'm
deliberately
now
sent
living
a
in
video
Winthrop.
and photos to Azalina
Hearing the girl's words,
just to let her check
Jiang
it
Hai
out.
also sat
It was
up
the
and
right
smiled
thing
at
to
her.
do.
My
After
name is
all,
Tarak.
it took a long time
I'm
for
from
a
the
knife
Tucker
to come and
clan.
go.
If I dared to
Azalina
say
could
that
tell
I'm
at
an
a
American,
glance what
her
kind of people
patriarch
these
will
people
kill me.
were. When she
Hearing
heard
Jiang
Jiang
Hai
Hai's
ask
words,
her,
she
the woman
immediately
couldn't help
said,
but laugh and
"Spartacus?
said,
Tarak,
I really
it seems
haven't
to be
heard
a
of
boy's
it.
name. What does it have to do with Spartacus?" Listening to Azalina's words, Jiang Hai said with a smile, "Spartacus is a TV series in the United States. The plot in it, hee. Let's put it this way. This TV series can only be broadcast in the middle of the night in the United States, and children are completely prohibited from watching it. The plot is quite colorful. The whole movie is mainly intertwined with red and yellow. It is also one of Jiang Hai's favorite TV series, but he can't eat while watching this TV series. It has nothing to do with the thing you're watching. This mercenary group was established during World War II. At the beginning, it was established by some defeated troops not recognized by the government in Poland. Its origin is in North America. Later, after World War II, it cooperated with the U.S. military in many ways. They can be seen on many battlefields, but the U.S. military has a lot of restrictions on this mercenary group, so they don't have any heavy weapons, but their individual skills are very strong. Listening to Azalina in front of him, Jiang Hai couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. The total number of people is about 1,000? F***CK, that's 1,000 people. This time, he faced less than 100 people, and almost couldn't make it back. If these 10 million people attacked his manor, wouldn't it be over? Don't worry, these people don't dare to act on a large scale in the United States, and this is just a small team of them. They are different from those local gangsters. They were originally targeted by the United States, and this time they attacked an Indian tribe. They probably can't stay in the United States anymore. Seeing Jiang Hai's gaze, how could Azalina not understand what he was thinking? She could only comfort Jiang Hai. Sometimes, Jiang Hai was thinking too much. Phew, that's good, but 1,000 people sigh. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai was relieved. But to be honest, a mercenary group of 1,000 people, and one that was so good, Jiang Hai's heart was still a little uneasy. Don't worry, you didn't buy us sisters for nothing. We can guarantee your safety, don't worry. Seeing that Jiang Hai was still a little worried, Azalina rolled her eyes at him and said confidently, Okay, what about the white man who was the leader? Do you know him? Listening to her words, Jiang Hai hesitated and asked her whether the mercenary group will attack his manor or not. This is not something that Jiang Hai can control. It is better to know the enemy first. The mercenary group has already figured it out. But what about the white man? He is really a little curious. That white man, if I'm not mistaken, should be Lynch Walter. This guy is quite famous internationally. He's an Englishman. He says he's an explorer, but he's actually a tomb raider. Hearing Jiang Hai ask about the white man, Azalina also told him. Listening to her words, she was quite disdainful of this white man. According to Azalina's introduction, the white man named Lynch Walter was a historian at first. He graduated with a doctorate from the University of Cambridge. When he was studying for his doctorate, he studied history and had a good understanding of the history of every country. When he was 31 years old, he organized a group of people for the first time and dug up the tomb of a noble in Europe. Although he was scolded, he obtained a large number of antiques from it. He turned in a part of them and sold the rest. After gaining a large amount of money and fame, this person was somewhat addicted. He claimed that he was an explorer and wanted to find all the treasures in the world.
In the following years, he has been wandering around the world, although in the eyes of the public he basically has no news. But in the circle of rich people, and in the underground world, he is still quite famous. First, because he has a lot of money. Second, because there are a lot of rich people who have a relationship with him. When he goes underground, he has to give a part of the things inside to these people to act as a protective umbrella. Moreover, these people protect him, and also give him a lot of money and cutting-edge technology. Otherwise, according to Azalina's understanding of Spartacus, this mercenary group cost $3 million to dispatch a squad, and $200,000 to settle down for each death. Jiang Hai had killed more than 20 people, which added up to more than $10 million. For Europeans and Americans who never saved money, taking out $10 million at once was not a small amount. But when it came to money, Jiang Hai really did not care. When it came to cash, he was not against anyone. There are also grave robbers abroad. Although he did not care about this man named Lynch Walter, he was still quite curious about his profession. When he was in China, he always heard about grave robbers and the like. After all, in the domestic novel system, there was only one branch, and every book was written as if it was real. Recently, the domestic movies also took the same approach. Of course, you don't play games, do you watch movies? National Treasure, Tomb Raider, and a long time ago, Indiana Jones's Raiders of the Lost Ark, and the Mummy series. Are they all about grave robbing? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Azalina could not help but shrug and said. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also thought for a while. It seems that probably it is true. Okay, but I don't know what is in that tribe this time, that is worth these people making such a big fuss over. With a wave of his hand, Jiang Hai could not help but think of the goal of these people this time. He did not know what was in that tribe. Don't even think about it. Just be a well-behaved rich man. It seems that I have to hurry up and do it with you. With your death-seeking character. If one day you're gone and I don't even give you a body, you won't be able to live in peace even as a ghost. Looking at Jiang Hai in front of her, Azalina rolled her eyes at him, then said in a very unhappy tone. Don't even think about it. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but smile. But to be honest, although he and Azalina had already confirmed that kind of relationship a long time ago, the two of them didn't seem to have any. It seemed that this time when he went back, he should hurry up and get it done. The car sped all the way, and not long after, they had returned to Jiang Hai's manor in Winthrop. As soon as the car stopped, Qijia, Feng Yinchen, Ai Xiaoxi and others, who heard that Jiang Hai caused trouble again this time, surrounded Jiang Hai. Most of the women were looking to see if Jiang Hai was missing any parts, but a small number of them were looking at Jiang Hai's face. After all, Jiang Hai is also a man with a family now. Is it really good to be so careless all the time? Looking at their stern faces, Jiang Hai was quite happy in his heart. This means that they have him in their hearts, right? After laughing and fooling around for a day, Jiang Hai and the others went to bed very early in the evening. Although they hardly slept last night, Jiang Hai was still quite energetic tonight. With his physical fitness, it didn't matter if he didn't sleep all night. As the saying goes, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Feng Yunchen, Ai Xiaoxi, Qijia, and Qiya, who had not felt Jiang Hai for almost 20 days, worked very hard. Usually, they were always separated, but tonight, they were together. They had a good time in Jiang Hai's room. For them, today's Jiang Hai was not only a person who came back after leaving home, but also a person who had just experienced an accident. It was not until late at night that the five of them fell asleep. The next morning, when Jiang Hai woke up, he found that Qiya had already prepared breakfast for him. After breakfast, Jiang Hai strolled around his manor as usual. He had been away for nearly a month, so he wanted to take a good look at his manor and see if there were any changes. He also wanted to discuss the future development of the manor with Dulles Gerard, Robbins Garcia, and Edouard Anderson. Chapter 762. Ah, it's so hot. Jiang Hai muttered softly as he sat under the shade of a tree in front of the villa. It was cool inside the villa because there was an air conditioner. However, when the air conditioner was turned on in the villa,
They were not allowed to open the windows. Jiang Hai would feel a little stuffy if he stayed in the villa for a long time. However, it was really too hot outside. He raised his head and looked at the sun that seemed to be getting hotter and hotter. He could not help but let out a long breath. Although Jiang Hai's physical fitness was getting better and better, it was not to the point where he could not avoid the cold and heat. Therefore, he was hot in the summer and cold in the winter. The weather in July is really unbearable. Jiang Hai could not help but sigh as he felt the rising temperature around him, and saw the usually lively Xiao Bai and Xiao Huang lying on the ground in the shade. After Jiang Hai celebrated the New Year this year, he returned to Winthrop. His schedule was very busy. He came back in March to plant fruits and harvest fish. In April, he went to the beef show. At the end of April, he went to the Magaon wine competition. In May, he went to the Brussels wine competition. There was also Azalina's auction. When he came back, it was already June. After staying at home for more than 10 days, he felt that he was about to level up, so he went outside. 20 days had passed. When Jiang Hai came back the day before yesterday, it was already the 3rd of July. On the 3rd, he spent a good night with Qi Jia, Qi Ye, Feng Yunshan, and Ai Xiaoxi. The next day, he went to the manor to get a general understanding of the recent situation. During the days that he was away, nothing happened in his manor. It was very peaceful. Sometimes, Pra Walton and Zhang Dihai would call Robbins Garcia and tell him how many cows to prepare. Then, they would come over to pick them up at the exact number. Because they had worked together for a year last year, they were already familiar with the process. Otherwise, Du Feynman's people or Luke Sean's people would call and tell Robbins Garcia how much fodder they needed and how many cows they had to pick them up at the exact number. They had already prepared for this long ago. Although Jiang Hai bought a lot of new land, he was benevolent and righteous. He still hasn't recovered the land yet. After recovering the land, he wouldn't be able to use the land directly. He would have to re-fence the land, clear the grass and plant new grass. He didn't want ordinary pasture. These pasture were to be sold, so naturally, he wouldn't use ordinary species. Now that he was in his manor, he could not get any more fodder. But for the new ranch, he must get good fodder. Even if he sold fodder, he had to sell his conscience. He only planned to plant 2 types of forage grass in the new pasture. One was the emperor of all forages, the emperor bamboo grass, and the other was the alfalfa, which was known as the best forage grass in the world. These 2 types of forage grass were not easy to grow, especially the latter. The alfalfa had the highest nutrition, but the reason why this type of grass was not planted on a large scale was that the growth of this type of grass had very high requirements. There were requirements for humidity, temperature, altitude, and so on. Therefore, people all over the world knew that this type of grass was good, but there were not many who could use it as fodder. However, Jiang Hai did not have to worry about this. After all, Jiang Hai's spiritual energy could help them break through these requirements. He believed that with these 2 types of fodder, not only the cattle on his ranch, but also the cattle bought by Luke Sean and Du Feynman would have a good effect. But it was useless to talk about this now. After all, the ranch had not been recovered yet. Everything was fine on Robbins Garcia's side, and Edward Anderson's side was basically on the right track. The new fishing boat was in place, and Edward Anderson divided all the fishermen into 2 teams. He and Marlon Rupert were captains respectively. When the first team went fishing at night, the second team would get up in the morning to deliver the fish. After the second team went fishing at night, the first team, which had rested for a day, would get up in the morning to deliver the fish and go fishing at night. The 2 teams took turns. It could be said that all the fishermen were not tired, and it was not too exhausting. The most important thing was that the income was considerable. The fish raised in Jiang Hai's manor had earned a lot of money in the past few days. It was not only the supermarkets of Prawalton Sam's Club, but also almost all the top seafood restaurants in Boston. Note that Jiang Hai was talking about the top seafood restaurants, and they all used Jiang Hai's seafood. The taste had become famous, and the tourists in Winthrop were more attracted to Jiang Hai's seafood. In the beginning, Jiang Hai mainly sold lobsters when he sold seafood, but now, he basically sold everything. Fishing was not like slaughtering cows. It was not so precise. It was better to catch more than 100 kilograms of fish every day. Except for the extra fish that was to be sent to the restaurant in Pra Walton, there was no more fish left. In addition to the people in the manor eating, the tourists and the restaurants in Winthrop would arrive at the entrance of Jiang Hai's manor very early every morning, waiting for the fish truck to come. There was no more fish left, and they wanted as much as they could get. Therefore, Edward Anderson's recent days were quite good. With Jiang Hai selling the seafood at 3 or 4 times the market price, they could get a considerable amount of money at the end of the year. Robbins Garcia and Edward Anderson were quite comfortable these days, while Dulles Gerard was simply happy. After winning the 2 awards, some European people began to come over to buy Jiang Hai's red wine. However, according to what Jiang Hai said, he only sold a few bottles less. These bottles of wine should be kept in storage. Although he had not created enough profit, Dulles Gerard was already very satisfied, because he had proven his strength. Jiang Hai did not want to sell the wine. If he wanted to, the wine in the wine warehouse alone could be sold for tens of millions. This was also the wealth he had created, and the old man was not as eager to prove himself as before. Jiang Hai was also happy. The wine had not been fully developed yet, and he would sell it next year or the year after. Jiang Hai would be merciful if he did not blackmail the other party for $2,000 a bottle. It must be noted that Jiang Hai's winery, which was this vineyard, could produce more than 40,000 bottles of wine every year. $2,000 a bottle was nearly $100 million. Although it was still a little less than the fish and beef, it must be noted that this did not require much labor and cost. This was completely free money for Jiang Hai. Thinking about it, Jiang Hai's manor could currently sell $1.5 billion a year for beef, $1.5 billion for fish, and $100 million for red wine. He could earn $1 billion a year, plus the money from selling grass. Now he had expanded so much land. If he sold grass for $900 million a year, it would be easy for him to earn $4 billion in total. In addition, he had expanded the fish farm, and his income from the fish farm would only be higher in the future. It was $1.5 billion now, and it might be $2 billion or $2.5 billion in the future. According to Jiang Hai's calculation, $5 billion a year did not seem to be a problem. And this was under the condition that Jiang Hai didn't really want to make money. After paying taxes, Jiang Hai could still have more than $2 billion a year. Thinking this, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be amused. In fact, money was a bastard. Look, no matter how much you spent, you could earn it back in a short time. Of course, this was only what Jiang Hai was saying now. It must be noted that 2 years ago, all his assets added together were less than $20,000. Jiang Hai was quite realistic. Jiang Hai, we're going to the beach. Do you want to come with us? Just as Jiang Hai was thinking about the money he would earn in the future, a crisp voice sounded from a distance. Jiang Hai didn't need to look to know that it was Qi Jie's voice. Sure enough, looking around, Qi Jie was wearing an orange bikini with Xiaobai on it. She was wearing a towel and a pair of big sunglasses. She was looking at Jiang Hai at the door. Yes, of course. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also felt that it was a good choice to go swimming now. So he jumped down from the recliner and said to her, "Then come in and help clean up." Hearing that Jiang Hai wanted to go, Qi Jie also waved to him. Seeing her action, Jiang Hai also walked into the villa with a smile. As soon as he walked in, he couldn't help but feel that his eyes were bright. At this time, this villa was really eye-catching. Qi Jie said that she wanted to go to the beach. Naturally, it was impossible for her to be the only one who wanted to go. So now in Jiang Hai's villa, it was a perfect swimsuit show. Except for Qi Jie. Qi was wearing a black and white one-piece swimsuit. When she saw Jiang Hai coming in, she was still a little confused. Except for her, the others were wearing bikinis. Ai Xiaoxi was wearing a pure white, but it was not big. The triangular pocket in front of her was very round. The trousers on the lower body were okay in the front, but the back could be clearly seen. Feng Yinshan was even bolder. She was wearing the kind that didn't even have a belt on the top. It was the kind that was directly buttoned in the front. It was very tempting. The lower body was flesh-colored with a floral pattern, which looked very beautiful. Afra and the others, who didn't go to the grape garden today, were also here. They were wearing the clothes that Jiang Hai had seen before. Basically, they were bought by Prawalton. Although Jiang Hai also gave them a lot of money, they really didn't spend much money on these clothes. However, they really didn't know how to spend the money. Now that they were wearing these clothes, they were naturally quite beautiful. Daliana and Marian were more conservative than them. Although they were also bikinis, they were the cute type. The upper body was white with a heart-shaped pattern on it. The lower body was pure white with a small skirt. Jiang Hai didn't allow them to dress too provocatively. After all, they were his daughters. Since they said that they were going, naturally Azalina, Galina, and Wallace Shelley were also going. Azalina was wearing a more conservative black bikini, which really gave off a mysterious feeling, because what she was wearing now was not a bikini, but just a navel-bearing dress, that was all. "Where are your clothes?" Looking at Galina, Jiang Hai leaned over with some doubts and asked her. "Well, inside." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Galina's face couldn't help but blush, and then she whispered. She naturally knew what Jiang Hai's so-called clothes were, and it couldn't be the one she was wearing now. "You still want to wear this?" Looking at her, Jiang Hai couldn't help but say with a little dumbfounded. "It's none of your business, humph." Hearing Jiang Hai still asking, Galina couldn't help but become a little angry. After wrinkling her nose and snorting, she went out first. They were going to the beach to play, although this sea was Jiang Hai's. They could go at any time, but they couldn't just go to play in the water and come back. Before that, Chiya and the others had already prepared food, sunscreen, folding chairs, umbrellas, and so on. Naturally, Jiang Hai had to prepare them. After deliberately going upstairs to change into a pair of swimming trunks, Jiang Hai left first, because the sunscreen, umbrellas, and other things were still at the dock. Driving his own four-wheeled motorcycle, little Huang and Xiao Bai also followed Jiang Hai all the way. Not long after, they came to the front of the manor's dock. At this time, at the dock, Edward Anderson and the others, who were preparing to sail tonight, had just returned from delivering fish. At this time, they were also quite hot, and were enjoying the cool air over there. After seeing Jiang Hai coming over, they also greeted Jiang Hai. After Jiang Hai explained the purpose of his visit, Edward Anderson and the others took the initiative to help Jiang Hai carry the umbrella, and went to the only flat beach nearby. This beach was indeed a good place to play because it was all fine sand, and the beach area extended very far into the sea. It was almost 50 meters deep. Not far behind was the forest, and there was wind, but it was not too strong and was very cool. This was not the first time Jiang Hai and the others came here. After arriving here, Jiang Hai and the others put an umbrella in every 2 or 3 meters. After everything was done, Edward Anderson and the others sensibly left. It should be known that the people playing here were all the women in Jiang Hai's room. These women were not people they could see, so after saying goodbye to Jiang Hai, they directly left. Jiang Hai waited here for more than 10 minutes. With the sound of a motor, the girls in Jiang Hai's room also came over. Chapter 763. Jiang Hai, do me a favor, help me apply sunscreen. Lying on a deck chair, Chi Jia lazily said to Jiang Hai next to her. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also laughed at himself, but he still put down the phone in his hand and walked over. As soon as they arrived at the seaside, everyone began to get busy. As the only man, Jiang Hai had a lot of things to do. For example, he had to set up the deck chairs that they brought along, and put them under the umbrella. The girls, on the other hand, had a lot of free time. After setting up the stove, they lit up the charcoal and began to burn it. When it came to barbecue, there was a very important point. That is, when the charcoal has just been burned, it can't be barbecued, because when the new charcoal is burned, it will produce a lot of poisonous gases, such as carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, and so on. Jiang Hai didn't know the specifics. His chemistry was also taught by his physical education teacher, but it will indeed produce poisonous gases. At this time, barbecuing directly, because the barbecued person is too close, It is easy to be poisoned, and there will also be some residue on the barbecued meat. So people who often barbecued understand that before barbecuing, the most important thing is to raise the charcoal. After the charcoal is burned, put more on it, and then let it burn until all the charcoal is no longer black. It is all red inside, and the outside is gray. At that time, the fire will be high, and there will be no poisonous things. So people often see that some barbecue shops that open at night will start to burn charcoal at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. This is to raise the charcoal. Jiang Hai and the others naturally didn't burn charcoal for the first time, so they were familiar with it. After setting up the stove, they dug 2 big holes in the sand pit, and then put the beer and the box of ice and meat that they brought over in the sand pit to let the water constantly wash and keep it cool. These girls also played. As Alina was the first to dive down, Jiang Hai didn't worry about her safety under the water. Feng Yunchen and Ai Xiaoxi were also playing on the beach, while Aphrodite and the others were in the shallow water. Although Daliana and Marian were 16 years old, they still looked young and were playing with sand on the beach. Jiang Hai, Qijie, and Chiya were lying on the beach. Chiya, the quiet girl, was watching a Korean drama on her mobile phone. Recently, it was said that there was a ban on Korean dramas in China. However, in the United States, to be honest, the culture of Japan and South Korea was much more recognized than that of Huaxia. After all, from a strategic point of view, Japan and South Korea were the godson of the United States. Alright, it was better for Jiang Hai not to talk about politics now. Anyway, it was just watching Korean dramas, and he was not addicted to it. Just as Jiang Hai was about to play games there, Qijie called out to Jiang Hai. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai didn't say anything to refuse. He walked to her side, dug out a piece of sunscreen, and rubbed it on her back. Although the two just played together last night, Jiang Hai's big hand seemed to have magic. When it touched Qijie's back, her body couldn't help but shake, and then her legs clamped together. Wipe it thoroughly. Looking at Jiang Hai, who stopped moving after feeling the change in her body, Qijie couldn't help but raise her head and glanced at him, then gently untied the bikini strap on her back. In an instant, the bikini sides fell down, and in Jiang Hai's sight, a pair of hemispheres appeared in front of him. Then I won't be polite. Looking at the scene in front of him, Jiang Hai smiled, and then his big hand began to wipe Qijie's back. Of course, his hand would wipe Qijie's sides from time to time. Every time Jiang Hai's hand brushed the sides, it would make Qijie tremble. But she didn't say anything to stop it, because she also liked this feeling. After Jiang Hai's hand wiped the back for more than 10 minutes, his hand slid down to the lower body. Qijie's straight legs and perfect feet were all displayed in front of Jiang Hai one by one. To be honest, he didn't know if it was because of the transformation of spiritual energy, or these girls originally had such a level. These girls' figures were quite good, and they were quite hot. In addition, Qijie liked to exercise in boxing. Therefore, her whole body was particularly strong. Touching it with his hand, it was like a water ball with bath gel. It felt soft and slippery in his hand, making him unable to stop. It could be said that whether it was the waist, legs, feet, hands, face, and some parts on the front that couldn't be described, according to the old internet language, they were all things that could be played with for a year. If they were combined together, they could be played with for a lifetime. Just like Jiang Hai now, he was a little reluctant to let go. His hand rose from the ankle, calf, thigh, and then to some parts that couldn't be described. Looking at the pair of shorts, Jiang Hai's hand also slid in. Feeling Jiang Hai's movements, Qijie's body couldn't help but tremble violently. However, she didn't stop Jiang Hai, and let Jiang Hai's hand wander around here. Not long after, he was no longer satisfied with 2 lumps, but walked to the middle of the 2 lumps. As soon as his finger slid in, Qijie couldn't help but let out a low moan from her throat, and then she gave Jiang Hai a reproachful look. Jiang Hai knew that it was the part she hadn't explored yet, but with the lubricity of the sunscreen, Jiang Hai's hand began to invade. There, humph. Following Jiang Hai's movements, Qijie whispered to Jiang Hai, but unfortunately, Jiang Hai's hand didn't stop there. Seeing that Jiang Hai was still making trouble, Jia gently bit her lips, and then instantly took out something that couldn't be described from Jiang Hai's part, and bit it hard. At this time, everyone didn't know that Jiang Hai and Jia had unknowingly started a war here. Just as Jiang Hai was about to start a full-scale war, Jia in front of him suddenly screamed, and then her body trembled. In fact, everyone here, except for Delina and Marian, knew what this meant, but they didn't think about it that way. After hearing Jia's voice, everyone looked over, and the closest one was Jia. When she heard Jia's voice, she couldn't help but ask, "Sister, are you okay?" Oh, I'm fine." Hearing Jia's words, Jia's face couldn't help but blush, and then she immediately stuffed Jiang Hai back. Regardless of whether he was uncomfortable or not, she quickly fastened the strap on her back, pretending that nothing had happened. Looking at her like this, Jiang Hai really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What should I do now? Find a way to solve it yourself. Seeing the expression on Jiang Hai's face, Jia couldn't help but glanced at Jiang Hai, then whispered. As soon as Jiang Hai heard her words, he knew that she wasn't going to help him anymore. But he didn't have the habit of forcing girls to do things, so he was ready to go back to lie down. He estimated that he would be fine after a while. But at this moment, he found that Jialina was walking into the woods in the distance. Needless to say, she was going to change her swimsuit. Seeing this, Jiang Hai rolled his eyes and quietly followed her. At this time, Jialina didn't know that Jiang Hai was still following her. After walking into the forest, she hid behind a big tree and began to take off her coat. As her coat was taken off, a black swimsuit with a similar style to Hualizi's swimsuit appeared in the air. Azalina had her own swimsuit. After all, she had been here for so long, it was impossible for her not to have gone swimming. Jialina's and Hualizi's swimsuits should have been bought together. Looking at Jialina's cold and arrogant manner, he knew that it was impossible for her to pick it out herself. It must have been Hualizi who picked it out for her. However, such a beautiful scenery benefited Jiang Hai at this time. As soon as Jiang Hai came over, he saw Jialina taking off her pants. As soon as Jiang Hai came over, she noticed Jiang Hai. Her eyes swept over directly, but after seeing that it was Jiang Hai, she was a little unnatural. She wanted to pull up her pants immediately, and at the same time, she said to Jiang Hai, "What are you doing here?" "I came here to see the beautiful scenery." How could Jiang Hai let her return to her original state? Then he stepped on the ground. In the next second, he had appeared in front of her. He directly grabbed her hands, forcibly raised both of them, and then pressed her against the big tree. I am changing my clothes. What are you doing?" Looking at Jiang Hai's face getting closer and closer, Jialina felt that she was about to faint. She stubbornly raised her head and said courageously. But unfortunately, her stubborn look now was very much in line with Jiang Hai's mood. Looking at Jialina in front of him, Jiang Hai lowered his head and kissed her. Feeling Jiang Hai's fanaticism in his actions, Jialina was even more unable to resist. About 10 minutes later, Jialina suddenly pushed Jiang Hai away forcefully. Her pretty face was full of red. I understand. I know what to do." Looking at Jiang Hai's gaze that was like a wolf seeing its prey, Jialina immediately waved her hand, indicating that she understood. Then she slowly squatted down and took off her swimsuit. Half an hour later, as Jialina kept coughing, the desire on Jiang Hai's face receded a little. "Cough, is it okay now?" Wiping the corners of her mouth, Jialina looked at Jiang Hai and said with some shyness, "It's not that easy." Listening to Jialina wanting to run, Jiang Hai couldn't help but laugh and directly pulled her to nowhere. As for what to do next, I can't write, please imagine it yourself. Just as Jiang Hai's family was relaxing by the beach, in New York's suicide resort, a white man's face was quite ugly. Wall Street, a street whose reputation was much greater than its actual size. Although the three words Wall Street referred to a street, it generally referred to the financial center of the world. Although he was reluctant to admit it, the wealth on this street was the most abundant in the world. Wall Street was located in the southern part of Manhattan, New York, extending from Broadway Road to the East River. The total length was only about 500 meters. According to the public transportation in domestic cities,
It was only one stop. The width was only 11 meters, just like the Champs-Élysées. The most famous thing about this long street was its name. The Morgan Conglomerate, Rockefeller, DuPont Consortium, and so on. All the banks, insurance companies, railways, and other companies that were set up here were all concentrated here. And the place with the largest flow of people here was the legendary New York Stock Exchange. Why was this place called a suicide hotspot? Because every financial crisis started here. Then they went bankrupt, and even owed the banks tens of millions or hundreds of millions of yuan. If they couldn't afford the money, what else could they do? Just jump. So don't stop here casually. Because if you stop to make a phone call, someone might jump down from a building dozens of stories high and hit you. Or hit your car. Anyway, no matter what it hit, it was your bad luck. Because you didn't buy a suicide insurance policy. Especially once the financial collapse happened, it would be like dumplings. Hundreds of people would die every day. It was really not a big deal. At this time, in the trading hall of Nasdaq, before Jiang Hai left, he asked Moses Adams to deal with the second of the three people, Mariong. Smith's face was really pale at this time. So pale that there was no trace of blood in his face. Because his biggest reliance had disappeared. Watching Moses, Adams sign his name in front of him, he felt that his life had become gray. He couldn't imagine what he would do in the future. Sorry, you provoked someone you shouldn't provoke. This is also my job. Looking at his dazed look, Moses, Adams walked over, patted him on the shoulder, and said with a smile. At the same time, he took out a form. All the companies that Mariong Smith's venture capital company had invested in were written on the form. But unfortunately, at this time, 3/4 of these companies had been crossed out. And today's most important first item was also crossed out. 12% of Alphabet's shares. If you don't understand the name of the company, Alphabet, then let me put it in another way. You must know that it is Google. Last year, after Google's Google Glass project failed, Google lost a lot of money. So on August 11th, Google's co-founder and CEO officially announced the news of the company's restructuring. He would start another new holding company with Google's co-founders, which was Alphabet. The shares would automatically be converted into shares with the same benefits and rights. Compared to some companies after restructuring, Google was quite impressive. After the restructuring, in February this year, Google even surpassed Apple and became the world's largest IT company, with a market value of $565 billion. Jiang Hai never played with the internet. First, because he didn't know how to play and didn't trust it. How many people died during the Nasdaq bubble? He pushed the money to these illusory things. Haha. Second, because he didn't need to play with it. His manner was enough for him to play with. But this time Moses, Adams helped him acquire something good. Chapter 764. This is not over. Gritting his teeth and lowering his head, Mariong Smith's voice seemed to come from his throat. I didn't say it was over, did I? My boss's original words were to kill you, not make you bankrupt. I think you know very well the difference between the two. Hearing Mariong Smith's words, Moses Adams also said with a smile. Yes, although he feels sorry, he will still do what he needs to do. If he wants to make Jiang Hai unhappy, then he won't be happy. Can he beat Jiang Hai when it comes to some things that are borderline? What a joke. The United States, to put it bluntly, is still a paradise for the rich. Whoever has money has reason. Jiang Hai is now richer than him. So even if Jiang Hai forces him to death, it is Jiang Hai's reason. This is the horror of a capitalist society. Damn it. I tell you, there is an old saying in Huaxia. 30 years to the west, 30 years to the east. Don't bully a poor young man. Everything I lost today, my money, my self-esteem, my bottom line, I will get these things back sooner or later. Looking at Moses Adams ridiculing him without caring at all, Mariong Smith was about to go crazy. He glared at him and said with a serious face, if Jiang Hai was here, he would have to consider whether this guy's engagement was also broken off at the same time. But even if the engagement was broken off, Jiang Hai didn't care. This is a real world, not a fantasy world. There is no dragon group here. No internal strength, no superhero. This is a farming novel that is a little off track. There are no mountain spirits, ghosts, or grandpas to make him stronger and regain his dignity. So what he lost is what he lost. It's as simple as that. Then I wish you success in advance. Hearing his words, Moses Adams couldn't help but chuckle, and then walked out of the hall. Just as he walked out, Penelope Daller also followed him out with the document. The situation on Marion Smith's side is almost settled, but there are some problems on the island side. Sitting in Moses Adams's car, Penelope Dahl looked at the contract in her hand seriously and said helplessly, "Then let's take it slow. I just found a good toy for the boss. I think he should like it." Hearing Penelope's words, Moses Adams chuckled and looked at the contract he had just signed. Jiang Hai doesn't understand finance. He doesn't understand it at all. He probably knows what stocks and futures are about. It's similar to collecting antiques. You buy it for 1 million yuan, wait for it to appreciate, and sell it when it rises to 2 million yuan. In this way, even if you make 1 million yuan, the stock is almost the same. But what you get is not a real thing, but some illusory company shares. If the company's income is good, it earns a lot and has a big impact, the company's shares will be valuable. For example, if 1 million shares are issued at 10 yuan each, then the company's market value will be 10 million yuan. But this company made something such as mobile phones, which were very profitable and in short supply. They sold mobile phones for 30 million yuan a year. At the end of the year, according to the equity division, one share can be divided into 30 yuan, which is worth 40 yuan. At this time, the company's shares are valuable. Some people will spend 40, 50, or 60 yuan to buy them. Slowly the price will rise. However, if the company's products were not worth much and lost a lot of money in a year, the products that were bought with 10 yuan might only be worth 2 or 3 yuan when they were sold. In that case, the company would lose money. It would not even be considered a loss. Then the company would go bankrupt. Jiang Hai didn't know how to play with finance, but that was probably what he meant. Moses Adams was an expert in this field. His way of dealing with the Cartwright Company is to first raise the stock price. The stock price was raised from 10 yuan to nearly 100 yuan. In this way, the company's market value is equivalent to nearly 10 times. But the company is not worth that much money. Therefore, when he raised the price to nearly $100, he suddenly sold the shares at a very low price. This caused a drop in price. At the same time, the shareholders who held the shares would also panic. Seeing that the price continued to be sold at such a low price, these people would sell their shares when the price was not very low. But the problem was that the company's shares were only worth $12. If you sold them at $50, the people who really knew the industry would not sell. Even if they wanted to buy, they would buy the shares that Moses Adams had sold for a few dollars, or even tens of cents. With such a strong force, the shareholders became more and more afraid and worried. In the end, the price is like a snowball, falling continuously. The Cartwright Company came out to save the market at this time to buy all the shares. At this time, it is time to see who has more money. In the end, Moses Adams, also known as Jiang Hai, was richer. The stock price of the Cartwright Company collapsed. Originally, it was worth more than $10, but in the end, it couldn't be sold for more than $10. It could only be sold for a few dollars, or even dozens of dollars. Even if he wanted to cut off his own flesh, he didn't want the company to go bankrupt for real. After clearing out the loose shares outside, coupled with the sharp drop in the value of the shares in the hands of these people, Moses Adams casually swept up the shares in the hands of some shareholders. More than 50% of the Cartwright Company's shares are easy to buy. In the company, whoever has the most shares will have the most say. It is that simple. Then the Cartwright family is kicked out of the company. Their shares are bought at the market price, which is a few dollars or tens of cents. Then, they are divided into scattered shares and thrown into the market. At this time, the original company will be sold according to the original market value. This depends on the level of negotiation. Moses Adams's skills were not bad, so he took over the Cartwright Company and earned 150 million. But for Marion Smith, it is a little troublesome.
Marion Smith's company is mainly funded by venture capital, which means he has a lot of shares in listed companies. This has to be done slowly. Fortunately, the results of the past few days were not bad. Marion Smith's biggest reliance was Google's shares. These shares not only represented money, but also some power. I have to tell the boss this good news immediately. Moses Adams smacked his lips. He was really excited. These were Google shares, 0.2% of the company's total value. Although they might not be worth a lot of money, only a few $100 million. The problem was that these shares were a symbol of status in the United States. These shares were enough to enter the board of directors. Thinking of this, Moses Adams immediately called Jiang Hai. But unfortunately, no one was willing to give him a call. Because at this time, Jiang Hai has no time to deal with his matters. He is waging war in the small forest. About an hour later, Jiang Hai walked out of the woods with Jialina, who was a little weak all over, and then put her directly on a recliner. She originally wanted to go into the water to play, but now she has no strength at all. After getting her a bottle of juice, Jiang Hai also returned to his recliner with a smile. You pervert, you should have a picnic in a while. After Jiang Hai lay down, Qijie couldn't help but frown and said to Jiang Hai. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai can't help but glare at her. Whose responsibility is it, don't you know in your heart? Looking at Qijie, Jiang Hai said with a face full of hatred. Humph. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qijie naturally understood what was going on, but she just blushed. She didn't mean to admit defeat. She straightened her neck and no longer looked at Jiang Hai. Looking at her proud look, Jiang Hai also smiled. He can really be angry with her over these trivial matters. Speaking of which, Jiang Hai has always felt that he owed Qijie, Ai Xiaoxi and the others. After all, these girls originally had a very good future before following him. Finding a person who loves them and living a plain life is actually quite good. But now they are following him. He is unlikely to give them a name, and it is unlikely that he will only have them by his side. The original love is now divided into many parts, so Jiang Hai's heart still has some feelings of debt to them. Although it is not heavy, it has always been there. It is precisely because of this that Jiang Hai usually spoils them. Seeing that Qijie did not speak, Jiang Hai also lay down, but he felt something on his back. He touched it and took out his phone. He was going to continue playing the game, but he didn't expect to see a call from Moses Adams as soon as he opened it. Then Jiang Hai dialed the phone back. The phone rang a few times, and it was picked up by Moses Adams. Hello Moses, why are you calling me? Listening to Moses Adams's voice over the phone, Jiang Hai also asked him. To be honest, he was really curious about why this person called him. Hee, I'm calling to give the boss a surprise. Boss, I got you a share. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Moses Adams couldn't help but laugh. Listening to Jiang Hai's words, he was quite excited. Share? What share? Hearing his words, Jiang Hai asked with some doubts. He really didn't understand this. It's Google 0.2% of the shares. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Moses Adams also said excitedly. This share? What's the use of it? Hearing his excited words, Jiang Hai was still very calm because he didn't play in stocks. This thing is very useful. Google shares? And it's 1.2%. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qijie, who had ignored Jiang Hai, suddenly turned her head and said to Jiang Hai seriously. What's the use of it? Hearing Qijie say that this thing is useful, Jiang Hai was also stunned. He thought that he didn't have the brain of a trader. And the most important thing is that he wrote about it when he read novels at home. The stock market is just a place for those financial tycoons to collect money and raise sheep. When they feel that it's about time, they will come out and buy a batch. That thing should not be gold and silver, nor antiques. If you say that it should be valuable, then it should be valuable. Bullshit. Hence, he had always kept a respectful distance from the stock market. He would stay as far away from it as possible, and would never touch it. Now Moses Adams got him some shares. To be honest, he didn't like it very much. If you don't understand, then listen carefully. Having more than 1,000th of the shares means that you are qualified to enter the board of directors. I think you should know what Google is. It is the world's largest search engine. Let me tell you 3 benefits first. First, if you become famous, you can print Google's director on the back of your business card when you go out. Even if your manor is 10 times bigger, your status among the higher-ups will still be that of a manor owner. But it is different now. You are an entrepreneur, and a top one at that. Second, you can use this identity to expand more businesses. You should understand this without me saying it. You can make friends with more rich people. Third, the most important thing is that you have conquered the most important platform for the Soaring Dragon Group to advertise. Looking at Jiang Hai, Qi Jie was not only a doctor, but also very sensitive to these things. She directly said to Jiang Hai. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but blink. She said it like it was true. What's the use of these shares? How much are these shares worth? According to what you said, people can enter Google's board of directors by spending 800 million yuan. Although the second and third points were very tempting for Jiang Hai, the problem was that these shares were not worth 1 billion yuan or 10 billion yuan. What's the use of these shares if they were only worth 800 million yuan? What you have is equity, not stocks. Stocks are scattered notes used for trading. What you have is equity, it can be used for dividends. Hearing Jiang Hai's layman words, Qi Jie couldn't help but roll her eyes and said to him, is she right? Hearing Qi Jie's words, Jiang Hai was also a little uncertain. He asked Moses, Adam's on the other side of the phone. Is this thing really that powerful? Miss Bernice is right. I got shares for you. You are qualified to enter the board of directors. The words of Jiang Hai and Qi Jie were clearly heard by Moses. Adam's on the other side of the phone. At this time he was driving back to Boston. He couldn't help but show a wry smile. He forgot that Jiang Hai was a layman. It's useless to be so excited about this. Jiang Hai is the most important thing. After talking for a long time, Jiang Hai doesn't understand the most tragic thing. But fortunately, there are many capable people around Jiang Hai, so he didn't let him work in vain. And after getting a definite answer, Jiang Hai was very happy. With this identity, he can open up more channels to sell his goods. At the same time, he can also find opportunities to advertise. This is indeed something that should make him excited. He announced on the spot that he would give Moses, Adams a reward, but he didn't give it now. He would wait until all the things were solved. Chapter 765. Moses. Adams knows that Jiang Hai has never been a stingy person. Naturally, he also cares about such verbal rewards, because he knows that this is what he can get. Boss, someone should contact you soon to register the transfer of shares at Google's headquarters. You can go there when it is convenient for you. The transfer of shares is not the transfer of shares. Especially for a big company like Google, they have to examine the temperament of each shareholder. Although it was only 1, 2% or 0, 2%, it could be said that for a large company like this it was nothing. But after all, Jiang Hai also has the right to vote, so it is inevitable to check his character. If Jiang Hai is really bad, then they may not let Jiang Hai join the board of directors. They may even directly convert the shares in Jiang Hai's hands into shares. So this place must be visited. Let's talk about it later. It is summer recently. Even if Jiang Hai doesn't understand these things, he knows that the headquarters of high-tech companies like Google and Apple are in California. It is summer now. Why would he go there? Why would he go there? Okay, they contacted me. I will confirm the time with you. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Moses, Adams also knows that Jiang Hai hates the heat there. In fact, he also hates it. As Jiang Hai's lawyer, if Jiang Hai goes there, he must also go. In this case, it is better to wait until winter. California is a good place in winter. This time, there is a channel for promotion. Hanging up the phone, Jiang Hai sat on the recliner, his face full of excitement. It is said that people who like to smile will have a good fate. In fact, it is understandable when you think about it. People with bad fate can't smile. Look at you, you are not leaving again, right? Watching Jiang Hai hang up the phone, Qi Jie glanced at him, then asked him somewhat ambiguously. Although she and Jiang Hai usually bickered, this was also a love-hate relationship. To be honest,
She really didn't want Jiang Hai to leave her, even if she wasn't the only woman by his side. Don't worry. He probably won't leave for the next few months. We'll talk about it again in winter. Jiang Hai smiled and said to her. Hearing that Jiang Hai would not leave in the near future, Qi Jie glared at him, and then continued to bask in the sun. At this time, Jiang Hai also saw that the charcoal fire had been completely lit in the distance. He walked over and put in some new charcoal. Jiang Hai thought for a moment, and then walked over to Qi Jie and Qi. It's a bit monotonous to just eat barbecue later. I'll go catch some seafood. What do you want to eat? Looking at the two women, Jiang Hai also asked them. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, several people here looked over. The sea was ruthless, but everyone knew that Jiang Hai's swimming was not ordinary. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, several people here remembered, but Qi Jie and Qi didn't speak yet. In the distance, Jialina whispered first. If it's not troublesome, you can bring me a few squid. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but walk over and give her a slap on the butt. What trouble are you talking to me about? Really? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, although Jialina didn't say anything, she was very happy in her heart. Just like what Jiang Hai said, he also regarded her as a family. This kind of feeling she didn't have before. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qi thought for a moment and said to Jiang Hai, I want to eat codfish. If you have one, just catch one. It doesn't have to be too big. I want black codfish, not silver codfish or codfish. Me. I want to eat shrimp. You can do whatever you want. At this time Qi Jie also said. After hearing their words, Jiang Hai made an okay gesture, then went to the four-wheeled motorcycle in the distance, took out a spear gun, which is used to shoot codfish, and added a metal net bag. After taking it, he asked the others what they wanted to eat. But these people didn't have anything to choose, because they were playing now. After confirming, Jiang Hai also walked into the sea, then plunged into the water. At first, he was floating, but after swimming for about 10 minutes, after confirming that everyone couldn't see him, Jiang Hai also plunged into the sea. Jiang Hai entered the sea more comfortably than on land, and his speed was faster. He ignored the water pressure, and almost instantly dropped below 10 meters. Compared with the 30 degrees outside, the sea was much colder. Above 5 meters it was still okay, about 20 degrees, but below 5 meters below 10 meters But fortunately Jiang Hai was already prepared, so he didn't care. After diving about 20 meters, Jiang Hai stepped on the water, while preparing the ingredients to be roasted today. Just now Qi Jie, Qi, and Jialina ordered shrimp, codfish and squid. Shrimp was at the bottom of the sea. There was no need to worry. Jiang Hai really had to look for codfish as for squid. Whoosh! As Jiang Hai stretched out his hand, a squid the size of 2 palms was caught in his hand. What a joke! Squid was raised by Jiang Hai as fish to be eaten. It would be strange if there weren't a lot of them. Originally these squid, even if they grew for 5 years, were almost the size of a palm, but Jiang Hai's feng shui was good. The squid here were not small. Generally speaking, they were the size of 2 palms. When cooking, the teeth and internal organs in the mouth were removed. Whether it was held with an iron clamp, roasted on charcoal, or taken back to cut into pieces, wrapped in bread powder, fried, or made into an iron plate squid, the taste was quite good. Together with the garlic chili sauce from China, the taste was indescribable. It tasted better than the best food sold on the street. At least, Jiang Hai liked it very much. While looking for haddock, Jiang Hai grabbed some squid that swam past him. In fact, the squid didn't swim slowly, but Jiang Hai's reaction speed and hand speed were too fast. These squid didn't have time to react at all. They were caught by Jiang Hai and stuffed into the small bag. Not long after, there were more than a dozen squid in the bag. Jiang Hai also stopped and concentrated on searching for haddock. Not to mention, he really found a group of haddock after a long time. Haddock was a kind of Atlantic codfish, but it was the same as the codfish that were generally checked. These haddock were named because of the black line around them, but their main habits were also different from the general codfish. Codfish generally swam not far below the surface of the sea,
And the reason why Jiang Hai sank 20 meters to catch them was because haddock was a bottom-dwelling fish. They lived at the bottom of the sea and were very small. The heaviest one was about 3 kilograms, and the longest one was about 70 centimeters. Of course, most of the adult fish were about 2 kilograms of fish, about half a meter long. But this kind of fish's meat was excellent. Generally speaking, after catching them, they were directly chilled and then sold as sashimi. Among the codfish, haddock was the king. After discovering the school of haddock, Jiang Hai swam quickly. Jiang Hai picked up the spear. Before the fish could react, Jiang Hai's right hand had already pierced through them. In an instant, the spear pierced through a large haddock. The haddock began to shake after the spear pierced through it, but it was useless. Jiang Hai walked over and took the fish from the spear. At the same time he glanced at it. This fish should be half a pile, maybe less than 2 kilograms. How could it be enough to eat? Fortunately, although the nearby fish were frightened just now, they were all stupid and didn't go far. Jiang Hai continued to shoot with the spear. Not long after, 3 or 4 fish were pierced. After all, they were fish from his own fish farm, and it was enough to eat. After loading the fish, Jiang Hai began to look for the last ingredient, shrimp. If there was one thing that Jiang Hai's fish farm had the most besides microorganisms, it would be shrimp. In Jiang Hai's fishing grounds, there are all kinds of prawns. He raises black-spotted prawns, bamboo prawns, Arctic sweet prawns because the water quality is particularly good. There are all kinds of prawns under the sea, mantis prawns, and so on. In Jiang Hai's fishing grounds, there are almost a dozen or 20 kinds of prawns. However, in the eyes of a famous foodie like Jiang Hai, shrimp were actually divided into 3, 6, and 9 grades. Some shrimp are suitable to be eaten. Some shrimp are suitable to be boiled. Some shrimp are suitable to be made into garlic shrimp. And some shrimp are suitable to be grilled. Now, Jiang Hai was looking for delicious roasted prawns. First of all, the prawns couldn't be too small. If the shrimp is too small, it will be burnt before it is grilled. The shell of the shrimp must be crispy, but the meat inside must not be too old. Therefore, it is inevitable to find some big shrimp. Just as Jiang Hai was looking, a group of red shrimp suddenly appeared in front of him. When he saw these shrimp, Jiang Hai was stunned. At first, he thought it was Arctic sweet shrimp. But when he looked carefully, he found that these shrimp were not Arctic sweet shrimp, but a new kind of shrimp. Thinking of this, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be a little confused. After swimming over, he picked up one and looked at it. When he saw it, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be shocked. Because this shrimp is really big. This kind of shrimp is red and very wide. Jiang Hai visually estimated that it is about 5 centimeters long. When it is straight, it is even as long as Jiang Hai's hand. Looking at this kind of shrimp, Jiang Hai was ready to catch some and ask Edward Anderson. He has seen a lot of shrimp, but he has never seen this kind of shrimp before. He is really curious, and this shrimp looks delicious when grilled. Thinking of this, Jiang Hai used both of his hands to grab the 2 prawns and directly stuffed them into his bag. Not long after, he caught 30 to 40 shrimp. Jiang Hai also likes to eat shrimp, so he is ready to catch more. But at this moment, suddenly, a black shadow floated from behind him. Jiang Hai felt the difference in the current and instantly flashed. Just at the moment when he dodged, a huge dark green fish with patterns on its body swept past him. But it just passed by. Although this fish is not small, it is not to the point where it can attack Jiang Hai. Its target is these shrimp. As soon as it lowered its head, a big shrimp was already in its mouth. With a force it swallowed it. And Jiang Hai looked at this huge fish. He was a little confused. He knows this fish, but it is because he knows it that he is confused. Because this fish should not appear in this place. Is this sume? Looking at the strange fish in front of him that looks a little like a parrot fish, but has a huge swollen head, he muttered in disbelief. Then he slowly swam to the side of this big fish. For the arrival of Jiang Hai, this fish did not have any excessive reaction. It still swam with the shrimp and bowed its head to eat from time to time. Front and back, left and right, Jiang Hai looked around carefully. He was very sure that this fish is sume. Sume is also known as rippled lip fish. Jiang Hai has introduced it before. There are also encyclopedias and so on. So Jiang Hai will not take up the word count here. This fish is an endangered species internationally, with the level yin endangered. Among the marine fishes, river fishes are not counted. There are many species of river fishes that are extremely endangered. But among the marine fishes, the only one that is extremely endangered and more precious than this fish is the coelacanth, this kind of living fossil. Jiang Hai used to read some novels about farming. This kind of fish would definitely appear in them. So it was only natural that this kind of fish would appear in Jiang Hai's fishing ground. If it was Jiang Hai from 2 years ago, he would only be happy right now and wouldn't have any other thoughts. But because Jiang Hai had learned a little in the past 2 years, he knew that this kind of fish would definitely not appear here. Because this kind of fish only appears in the Western Pacific Ocean and the Indian Ocean. That is to say, it is unique to Asia. If you look further, there is no such fish in Europe. How can such a fish appear here? Just when Jiang Hai was puzzled, something that made him even more puzzled happened. Because it seems that this fish did not come by itself. After swimming with this fish for more than 10 minutes, Jiang Hai also swam to the coral reef not far from his shore. Compared to the famous diving coral reef, most of the corals in Jiang Hai's place were reef-colored and gray, so they looked lifeless. But for fish, such corals were no different from those colorful corals. As these shrimp that Jiang Hai did not know crawled into the coral reef, a few humphead wrasse of different sizes emerged from the coral reef. Looking at these fish, Jiang Hai was confused. What the hell is this? Why is there a humphead wrasse here? And it is not only one that is lost, but there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are a total of 9 humpheads. This can already be regarded as a small community, but why are they here? I don't understand. Chapter 766. Just when Jiang Hai was puzzled, a huge body suddenly swam quickly from a distance. Jiang Hai glanced at it, but the corners of his mouth raised because he knew what it was. When Big Dump's ugly and scarred face appeared in front of Jiang Hai also slowly swam over. And seeing Jiang Hai, Big Dump's eyes flashed with a hint of excitement. Jiang Hai gently swam up, then sat straight on Big Dump's back, grabbed its dorsal fin, and patted its back. Jiang Hai hasn't seen it for a while. Feeling Jiang Hai's movements, Big Dump was very excited and turned around in place. You're guarding the sea area. You're doing well. Looking at Big Dump in front of him, Jiang Hai couldn't help but laugh. For Big Dump, it can be said that it is one of Jiang Hai's closest pets, second only to Little Yellow, Xiaobai, and Dai Teeth. Since Qiuqiu learned to fly, it has become a bit cold. Every day, it will fly out during the day and only fly back at night. Anyway, it is the national bird of the United States, and no one dares to hit it. So Jiang Hai is happy to be idle. And Big Dump, it can be said that among Jiang Hai's pets, it has changed the most. When Big Dump was first caught by Jiang Hai, it was just an ordinary sand tiger shark. But now, you can no longer see a trace of a sand tiger shark on its body. Now, with the constant nourishment of aura, and its body's limit of eating, Big Dump has grown into a giant in the sea. It is the absolute top killer in the sea, and the most famous killer is the great white shark. But generally speaking, the body length of a great white shark is about 4 to 6 meters, and it weighs more than 2 tons. The largest known great white shark is 7.2 meters long and weighs 3,200 kilograms, which is more than 3 tons. This is already the largest predatory fish in the sea. Whale sharks are bigger, but they are harmless. Whales are not fish. But the original overlord of the sea is just a fish in front of Big Dump at this time. At this time, Big Dump's body length was more than 10 meters, about 12 or 13 meters. It was already bigger than the great white shark. Even if it was a killer whale, it was still weak. Its body weight was almost 10 tons. Its whole body was black and shiny, and its eyes were full of spirituality. It was a perfect and smart killing machine. Since Jiang Hai discovered that the mountain lion that absorbed his aura mutated, he also paid some attention to the legendary extinct animals. Jiang Hai's situation at this time, he doesn't know what will happen, but he knows that it will not be bad. It was said that the largest shark that had ever existed in the world was the megalodon. Its body length was about 18 to 30 meters, and its weight was 60 to 80 tons. It was known as the strongest sea creature in history. It was even stronger than the legendary pleurodon. Because dinosaurs also need to breathe, they need to show their heads out of the water. But this shark does not need to. Of course, this megalodon did not live in the same era as dinosaurs. Dinosaurs went extinct 65 million years ago, but megalodon lived from 28 million years ago in the gradual epoch to 5 million years ago in the Pleistocene epoch. Looking at this big fool, Jiang Hai was also thinking, if one day it really grows up to be like that, then it would really be quite interesting. After patting Big Dumb, Jiang Hai channeled some aura into it. Feeling the aura entering its body, Big Dumb was even happier. But it was not happy for long before it was stopped by Jiang Hai. Then Jiang Hai pointed to the humphead wrasse. Big Dumb looked at Jiang Hai's gesture, thought for a while, and probably understood Jiang Hai's meaning. Jiang Hai's pets are all very intelligent. It probably guessed that Jiang Hai was asking where these fishes came from. After knowing what Jiang Hai meant, Big Dumb also quickly swam towards the outer sea. Big Dumb's speed in the sea was much faster than Jiang Hai. Not long after, they were far away from the shallow sea area. By the time Jiang Hai reacted, they had already swam to the outer sea. Following the direction where Big Dumb swam, Jiang Hai found a huge school of fish in the distance. Why is it a huge school of fish? Because the size of this school of fish is not ordinary. After swimming closer, Jiang Hai couldn't help but smile when he saw it. The size of these fish is inevitable, because these huge fish are made up of Big Dumb's wife and the 14 dolphins. Big Dumb's wife also absorbed a lot of aura. At this time, although it is not as big as Big Dumb, its size is not small. It is about 8 meters tall, a pair of small black eyes. After seeing Jiang Hai, it also excitedly turned around. After all, Jiang Hai and Big Dumb husband and wife have fought side by side. The 14 dolphins were also very excited when they saw Jiang Hai, but they did not move much and still maintained their original formation. Seeing their appearance, Jiang Hai felt a little strange at first, but after taking a closer look, he found that they are really powerful. Because at this time, these fishes are driving other fishes into Jiang Hai's fishing ground. What caught Jiang Hai's eyes were 2 very expensive Atlantic blue guns. Those sume were driven here by you. Seeing the Atlantic blue guns running into his fishing ground in a panic, Jiang Hai couldn't help but feel a little funny, so he patted Big Dumb's head and asked him. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Big Dumb happily swayed back and forth. Although Big Dumb and the others were sharks, they had eaten a lot of spiritual qi. Naturally, they also had some basic intelligence. As for the dolphins, they were the same. Dolphins are originally smart, and with the aura from Jiang Hai, these dolphins are even smarter. Why is Jiang Hai's fishing resources so developed? First, it is because the seaweed here is very good. The second reason was because Big Dumb and the others had nothing to do, so they would go to the Atlantic Ocean and bring the more valuable fish back to Jiang Hai's manor. And as they got stronger and stronger, the places they went were also getting farther and farther. These sume actually went astray. They originally lived in the Indian Ocean, but they accidentally swam into the Mediterranean Sea, and then to the Atlantic Ocean. When they wanted to go back, they were stopped by Big Dumb and the others. They were brought to Jiang Hai's fishing ground. These sume were originally unwilling to come to such a cold place, but when they saw the seaweed, small fishes, and so on, which were rich in aura, they felt that it was okay to live here, so they stayed. Of course, this is all in Jiang Hai's imagination. He doesn't know the specific situation, but he knows that Big Dumb and the others have done a good job. Good job! Patting Big Dumb again, Jiang Hai encouraged him. After playing with Big Dumb for a while, Jiang Hai also rushed back to the shallow sea and returned to the shore. When he came back, Qi Jia and the others were indeed a little worried. Because Jiang Hai has been in the sea for more than an hour, they were also afraid that Jiang Hai had an accident. Now that Jiang Hai came back, they didn't care. After taking out the ingredients in the bags, Jiang Hai also looked at the red shrimp he brought back. Sume was caught by Big Dumb and the others,
Jiang Hai knew this. But what's the matter with this shrimp? After handing the things to Qi Jia and the others, Jiang Hai was ready to ask Edward Anderson and the others. Knowing that Jiang Hai has something to do, Qi Jia and the others didn't have to stop Jiang Hai, so they told him to go and come back quickly. At the same time, under the command of Qi Jia, everyone began to pack up the seafood. Jiang Hai quickly came to the dock and stopped Edward Anderson, who was about to go back to sleep. "Boss, what's the matter?" Hearing Jiang Hai stopping him, Edward Anderson couldn't help but ask with some doubts. "I went to the sea to catch shrimp today, and I saw a lot of this kind of shrimp. I haven't seen it before, so I came to ask you." Looking at Edward Anderson's puzzled eyes, Jiang Hai also took out the shrimp he caught and looked at him and asked. "The fish was caught by Big Dumb. This is normal, but it's impossible for Big Dumb to get the shrimp. This is not normal. This is Argentinian red shrimp? Why is there Argentinian red shrimp here?" As soon as he saw the shrimp, Edward Anderson was also stunned, and then said with some uncertainty. Hearing his words, the fishermen who haven't left yet also came over. "It's indeed Argentinian red shrimp. I went to catch it when I was in South America." Looking at the shrimp, Andrew Christian said with a puzzled face, "This kind of shrimp is only produced in the southern hemisphere, near the South Pole. How can there be one here?" "I'm also puzzled, and there are a lot of this kind of shrimp." Hearing his words, Jiang Hai also scratched his head, indicating that he didn't quite understand. "No matter where this shrimp came from, boss, you picked it up again this time. This shrimp is not cheap." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Edward Anderson grabbed the big shrimp and couldn't help but laugh. Argentinian red shrimp is a wild shrimp that grows in the southern waters of Argentina. Because it is close to the South Pole, it is a deep-sea wild shrimp. It is still very popular all over the world. The quality of the shrimp itself is good, and the most important thing is that it is big. So it is very popular in China, and in some restaurants in China, it is even sold by the price. This is not a scam. The shrimp is bigger than a palm, and it is not excessive to sell it by the price. And there are many ways to cook this kind of shrimp. Roasting is one of them, and even its meat is delicious and can be made into sashimi. Of course, Jiang Hai doesn't eat that kind of thing, but it doesn't prevent him from knowing that this shrimp is also worth a lot of money. "I saw a lot of shrimp like this at the bottom of the sea. TSK. This is one more place to pay." Looking at the big shrimp in his hand, Jiang Hai smiled, and after giving the rest of the shrimp to them, Jiang Hai returned to the seafood stall with a smile. When he returned, the food for the first round had already been prepared. Chia was really talented at cooking. The marinated steak, plus the seafood that Jiang Hai brought, was presented perfectly in her hands. When Jiang Hai came back, they were eating the roasted meat. As soon as Jiang Hai came, he picked up a big piece of steak with his hand and stuffed half of it into his mouth. After 2 bites, his eyes narrowed. The beef in his manner is still the best. The taste of the beef is very rich, sweet, and juicy. After 1 bite, the taste of the meat juice exploded in the mouth. Although it is roasted, there is no taste at all. To be honest, you can't eat such delicious steak outside. Have you figured out what is going on? Seeing Jiang Hai eating as soon as he came back, Qi Jia, who was roasting fish on the other side, couldn't help but ask Jiang Hai. To be honest, she also felt that the shrimp was a little too big, so big that she didn't dare to eat it. "No problem, the shrimp is edible. The species should be called Argentina red shrimp. I don't know where it came from, but there is no problem eating it, and I heard that it tastes good." Hearing Qi Jia's words, Jiang Hai also sat next to her, eating the steak while looking at the red shrimp on the side. He didn't know whether it was delicious or not, but he could try it. "Is that so?" Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qi Jia curled her lips. "Since they have already caught it, then let's try it." He called out to Qi Jia, and Qi Jia handed the matter of roasting the meat to Aphrodite. Then, she came over and took out a thin needle from who knows where. She then grabbed the shrimp that was still moving and began to peel off the shrimp strings. Logically speaking, this kind of shrimp would be frozen when it came out of the water, but Jiang Hai and the others were eating it now, so it didn't matter. After picking out the shrimp line, Chia used a pair of tongs used for roasting squid, just like how she usually roasted shrimp. Then she put it on the fire and roasted it slowly. This had to be roasted slowly over a small fire, so that not too much gravy would be lost, and the shell would also be very crispy. Jiang Hai was a foodie, but he wasn't very good at cooking these things, so he had to listen to Chia. After the shrimp was done, the squid was also cleaned up, and the fresh squid was directly placed on the prepared iron plate. The cleaned squid was still struggling to move, and at this time, Chia's courage as a chef could be seen. Bang! 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 The squid was cut into several pieces. The teppanyaki squid that they usually ate was the kind that was dead and melted. Probably not many people had eaten this kind of fresh squid before. Jiang Hai also ate it for the first time after coming here. But he had to admit that fresh squid was also very delicious. Of course, this didn't mean eating it alive. Jiang Hai didn't even eat raw squid, let alone eat it alive. After the squid was almost cooked, and the fish were all dead, then she brushed it with chili sauce, sprinkled it with chili powder, xyron, sesame seeds, and some coriander to enhance the taste. Jiang Hai didn't want to eat the spring onions, so he didn't bud them. After the fragrance of these things was also exposed, he directly put the cut squid into a small bowl and used a toothpick to eat. After the first bite, Jiang Hai's eyes narrowed again. The squid in his manner was still the best. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.